The bride asked me to leave just after the lemon tart, not the restaurant, the table. Claire folded her linen napkin into a careful square and said, "Marlene, before we wrap up, we need to have a family discussion. Maybe you could head home before traffic gets bad." For a second, I thought she meant all of us. I reached for my purse and then I noticed her mother hadn't moved. Neither had her father. Evan was studying the tiny gold fork beside his plate, as if there might be instructions engraved on it. I set my purse back down. "I'm sorry," I said. "Did you mean just me?" Claire's expression changed by half an inch. "This part is really for me, Evan, and my parents." "What part?" "The part about how we're going to function as a family after the wedding." I looked at my son. He was 36 years old, broad-shouldered like his father, wearing the blue shirt I had ironed for him that morning, because he'd called from work and asked if I still had that good spray stuff. "And I'm not part of that discussion?" I asked. Evan finally looked up. "Mom," he said, "please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was the moment I understood someone at that table had been telling a story about me. I just didn't know yet how long my son had been telling it. Nobody raised a voice. That almost made it worse. The private dining room at Bellwether had upholstered walls and a fake fireplace glowing beneath a carved mantel. There were no windows, so Claire's warning about traffic had been especially thoughtful. For all she knew, the interstate had been swallowed by a sinkhole while we were comparing chicken sauces. Her father, Richard, cleared his throat. "I'm sure Claire didn't mean." Claire turned to him. "Dad." He stopped. Joanne Bennett sat beside her husband with both hands wrapped around her water glass. She had been pleasant to me for most of the afternoon. Not warm exactly, but polished. Joanne could make Pass the Salt sound like a statement approved by a committee. Now she looked at me with a kind of strained sympathy that told me this was not a surprise to her. I slid my reading glasses into their case. My fingers were steady enough to make me proud and angry at the same time. "I won't make anything harder," I said. Evan's face softened with relief. That hurt too. I stood, tucked my chair in, and picked up the cream-colored folder I'd brought. It held the final list of food allergies, the phone number for the hotel coordinator, and a page of notes about which older relatives would need rooms near the elevator. I had spent 3 evenings gathering that information because Evan said Claire was overwhelmed. I laid the folder beside his plate. "You'll need this." "Mom, wait," he said, but he didn't say stay. I thanked the catering manager as I passed her in the hall. She was standing beside a silver cart with 6 untouched coffee cups on it. "Was everything all right?" she asked. The tart was excellent. It was the kind of answer women my age learned to give when the real answer would ruin somebody else's afternoon. Outside, the April wind caught the edge of my jacket. I walked across the parking lot without buttoning it. My car was under a sycamore tree, already dusted with the pale green flakes that appeared every spring and made you wonder why nature had so many ways to dirty a windshield. I got in, shut the door, and put both hands on the steering wheel. Through the restaurant's front windows, I could see the hostess laughing with a man in a gray suit. Behind her, a server carried a tray of champagne flutes toward the private room. The family discussion was apparently well hydrated. My phone buzzed inside my purse. For one foolish second, I thought Evan had followed me out. It was Gail. "How's the fancy food?" she had written. "Did they serve 1 green bean standing upright in a puddle?" I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I typed, 3 green beans. They've gone extravagant. She sent back a laughing face and asked if I had smuggled bread into my purse. Gail had known me for 22 years. She would have driven straight to Bellwether and parked across the exit if I told her what happened. She would also have brought a folding chair and snacks for the confrontation. I wasn't ready for Gail. I put the phone face down in the cup holder and started the car. Evan had been nervous about the tasting all week. That morning he called while I was scraping burnt cheese off a casserole dish. "Do you have an iron?" he asked. "Do I have an iron?" I know. Dumb question. You grew up in my house. You've seen me iron. I've seen the board. I thought maybe it was decorative. I laughed. That was the thing about Evan. He could still get a laugh out of me before I had decided whether he deserved one. He said the cleaners had put a crease in the sleeve of his blue shirt, and Claire wanted everyone to look nice because the photographer might stop by. The photographer is coming to lunch? Just to get some planning pictures. Planning pictures, I repeated. Please don't start. I didn't start. I repeated. He arrived 20 minutes later carrying the shirt on a hanger and a coffee for me, prepared exactly the way I liked it. 2 creams, no sugar. He kissed my cheek, stole a strawberry from the bowl by the sink, and leaned against the counter while I set up the ironing board. "You're saving my life," he said. "No, I'm flattening your sleeve." Same thing today. There had been no mention of a family discussion, no suggestion that my presence at the tasting was controversial. He'd reminded me to bring the folder and asked if I could make sure Claire's father's sodium restriction was written down somewhere the chef would see it. "Richard hates people fussing over him," Evan had said. "Then I won't fuss. I'll give them the information quietly. You're the best." At Bellwether, I had done exactly that. The tasting started at 1. Claire arrived 5 minutes late with Joanne, both of them carrying matching leather notebooks. Richard came in behind them talking to someone on his phone. He was a big man with a soft voice and a habit of putting a hand on your shoulder when he greeted you, as if steadying you for news. "There she is," he said when he saw me, "the groom's better half." Claire laughed. Evan didn't. I should have noticed. But weddings manufacture so much nonsense that ordinary warning signs get lost in the decorations. People who have never cared about napkins develop opinions about folds. Adults who routinely eat crackers over the sink become wounded by the suggestion of buffet service. I had watched Claire spend 12 minutes choosing between 2 shades of ivory that looked identical to me. And I had kept my mouth shut because I loved her, and because every generation deserves its own ridiculous problems. Claire hadn't always been cool with me. The first time Evan brought her to Sunday dinner, she arrived carrying grocery store tulips and a bottle of wine with a screw top. "I panicked," she said, handing me both. He said, "You cook." "I do, but we don't grade guests." I was told there would be pie. "There will be pie." "Then I'd like to stay on your good side." She helped me clear the table without being asked. Later, I caught her examining the photographs on the hallway wall. She stopped at one of Evan at 23, sitting on the hood of his father's truck with a grin too large for his face. "He looks happy," she said. "He was terrible," I told her. That picture was taken 10 minutes before he backed the truck into our mailbox. Claire laughed so hard Evan came to see what she'd found out. After that, we got along easily, not like mother and daughter. I never pretended that. Claire had a mother, and Joanne's existence was not a vacancy for me to compete with. But we could talk. We could tease Evan. We could sit at the kitchen table after dinner while he and Richard argued about football in the living room. The wedding changed the temperature a few degrees at a time. First, Claire asked what flowers Evan's father had liked. Then Evan asked me to locate a photograph for the memorial table. Then there were cousins to contact, room blocks to explain, and the recipe for his grandmother's savory rolls, which the caterer had agreed to test as a possible side. Every request came through Evan. "Claire's drowning," he would say. Or, "This would mean a lot to her." Once he called while I was in the pharmacy and asked me to speak to his Aunt Diane about her dietary restrictions. Can't Diane tell Claire herself? She doesn't really know Claire. She knows how email works. Mom. That one word carried a whole speech. Be generous. You're good at this. Don't make me beg. So I called Diane. She talked for 45 minutes and somehow included details about her gallbladder surgery that no menu planner required. At the tasting, the savory rolls arrived during the second course. They were smaller than my mother-in-law used to make them and sprinkled with something green that would have offended her deeply. The catering manager placed a basket in the middle of the table. "These are the family recipe rolls." Joanne looked surprised. "Whose family?" "Evan's," I said. Claire glanced at him. "I thought these were just an option." "They are," Evan said quickly. I tore one open. Steam lifted from the center, carrying the smell of butter, onion, and thyme. For 1 second, I was back in my mother-in-law's kitchen, listening to her scold my husband for cutting them before they had cooled. "They're good," Richard said. They're heavy, Joanne replied. Claire took one bite. I think the rosemary focaccia fits the menu better. Evan shrugged. That's fine. I looked at him. You wanted me to find the recipe. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that much to us. Us. He said it casually, already reaching for his water. I told myself he meant the rolls didn't matter as much as the wedding. I told myself food was not memory. I told myself his father would have eaten the focaccia and asked for more. Then I helped the manager correct the note about Richard's meal because she had marked it gluten-free instead of low sodium. When we reached dessert, Joanne asked where Evan and Claire planned to spend Thanksgiving. We're still figuring that out, Claire said. Richard smiled at his daughter. Your mother already bought the extra table leaf. That was on sale, Joanne said. Evan glanced at me. Mom usually does Thanksgiving, but she's flexible. Nobody had asked if I was flexible. I said, I've hosted it for 31 years. I imagine the Republic will survive a new arrangement. Richard laughed. Claire didn't. That was when she folded her napkin. Driving home, I kept hearing Evan say, Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be, as though the difficult thing was my confusion, as though Claire's request had been reasonable until I made the mistake of understanding it. At a red light, I realized I was still wearing the small gold earrings Evan had given me for Christmas. Claire had picked them out. I touched one, then felt ridiculous for noticing. My house was quiet when I walked in. I set my purse on the bench and hung my jacket in the hall closet. On the kitchen counter sat the casserole dish from that morning, clean now, and beside it the strawberries Evan had raided. One had rolled behind the coffee maker. It was soft on one side. I threw it away. At 6:12, my phone buzzed. Evan had written, I'm sorry, things got awkward. Claire's under a ton of stress. A second message appeared. Did you happen to call Uncle Lou about the hotel? He still hasn't responded. I read both messages twice. Then I carried my phone to the dining room and sat in the chair opposite the one Evan usually occupied on Sundays. The room looked exactly as it had that morning. His folded newspaper was still on the sideboard from the week before. A faint ring from his water glass marked the table where he never used a coaster, no matter how many times I put one under his hand. For years, I had mistaken evidence that he needed me for evidence that I mattered to him. I did not answer about Uncle Lou. At 6:30, Evan called. I let it ring until the screen went dark. He called again 3 minutes later, which was his usual method of distinguishing an emergency from something he merely wanted. The third call would mean blood, fire, or a missing television remote. There was no third call. I made toast and stood at the kitchen counter to eat it. I had spent the afternoon tasting 5 entrees, 3 side dishes, 2 salads, and enough cake to stun a horse. But humiliation has a way of making your body forget it was fed. My phone buzzed again. Mom, can you please answer? I typed, I'm home safely. He replied before I could put the phone down. Can we talk? Not tonight. The little dots appeared, disappeared, and appeared again. Okay, I love you. That was Evan, too. He could put a soft blanket over a mess and believe the room had been cleaned. I took my plate to the sink. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a tomato, was the wedding task list Claire had emailed 6 weeks earlier. It was color-coded. Claire handled vendors in blue, Evan handled travel in yellow, Joanne handled design in pink, and my name appeared in small green boxes beside 11 different items. I had not noticed until then that no one else's name was green. Family, I said to the empty kitchen. The refrigerator hummed in response. I pulled the list down and sat at the table with a pen. I marked the tasks I had completed. The family photographs had been scanned and sent. Dietary information had been collected. The hotel had room preferences for the older guests. The caterer had the roll recipe, whether anybody wanted the rolls or not. 3 items remained. Confirm Uncle Lou's hotel reservation. Pick up framed photographs for the memorial table. Assemble welcome bags the week before the wedding. I had agreed to do all 3. That mattered to me, even if it no longer appeared to matter to anyone else. I wasn't going to leave Claire without photographs of Evan's father because I had been wounded over dessert. I wasn't going to make the hotel coordinator chase a man who treated voicemail as a government conspiracy. I called Uncle Lou. He answered on the 8th ring and whispered, "Hello? Why are you whispering?" I didn't recognize the number. You've had my number since 2009. They can copy numbers now. Who is they? There was a pause. You know. I didn't, but arguing would have added 20 minutes. I confirmed his reservation, explained breakfast, and repeated the hotel address 3 times. Before we hung up, he asked whether he was allowed to bring his own pillow. "Lou, you can bring a canoe if you can get it through the lobby. I don't want them charging me." For the canoe? For anything. I promised to alert the authorities. Afterward, I added a check beside his name. Then I opened my email and wrote a message to Evan and Claire. I stared at the blank screen for a long time. Anger made certain sentences feel wonderful while I typed them and embarrassing when I read them back. I deleted, since I have learned that I am apparently a vendor. I deleted, "I hope your real family enjoys the focaccia." I even deleted, "Don't worry, I won't make this harder than it needs to be," though that one was painful to surrender. What I finally sent was shorter. I've completed the family contacts and hotel information, including Uncle Lou. I will still pick up the memorial photographs when they're ready, because I committed to that. I'm returning responsibility for the welcome bags to you, with enough notice to make other arrangements. I'll attend the wedding as your invited guest and be glad to celebrate with you. Going forward, however, I won't continue doing family work while being excluded from family conversations. It was almost midnight when I hit send. Claire replied at 7:14 the next morning. "Understood. Thank you for letting us know. No apology, no argument." The period after understood somehow had posture. Evan called at 7:16. "Good morning," I said. "What is that email?" "It's an email." "Mom, you ask questions with very obvious answers." "I'm serious." "So am I." I could hear a door close on his end. He lowered his voice. "Claire is really upset." I looked out the kitchen window. A squirrel was hanging upside down from my bird feeder, shoveling sunflower seeds into its mouth. I admired its honesty. "Is she upset that I'm coming to the wedding?" "You know that's not what I mean." "Then tell me what you mean. You made it sound like we've been using you." I waited. "Which we haven't," he added. "You asked me to perform 11 wedding tasks. We didn't ask. You volunteered for half that stuff." There it was, small enough to miss if I had wanted to miss it. "Name one." "What?" "Name one thing I volunteered to do." "Mom, I don't have the list in front of me." "I do." He exhaled sharply. "This is exactly why Claire wanted a private conversation. Because I keep records? Because you turn everything into a trial. I left when she asked me to leave. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anybody. I didn't throw a tart. What trial did I create? You put that folder down like you were quitting a job. I was told the discussion was about how the family would function after the wedding, and that I wasn't included. What was I supposed to think? That it was about us establishing our own family, with Joanne and Richard. They're helping us with certain things. So am I. That's different." He said it fast, then went quiet. I gave him time to hear it. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "Look, Claire feels like you've been too involved. That landed differently from the rest. Has she said that to you?" "Yes." "When?" "A bunch of times." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I'd handle it." I sat down. There are phrases that seem harmless until you ask what work they have been doing behind your back. "I'd handle it." To Claire, perhaps that meant Evan would protect their wedding from his intrusive mother. To me, handling things had meant calling Uncle Lou after dinner. "What does she think I involved myself in?" I asked. "The menu, for one. You asked me to find your grandmother's roll recipe. I asked if you had it. You called 3 times. Because the caterer had a deadline. And the guest dietary list? You're better with the relatives. The hotel rooms? Same reason. The photographs? I don't know, Mom. Dad was your husband." The sentence was careless, not cruel. Evan had always been most dangerous when he was careless. Cruelty announces itself. Carelessness walks through the house in socks and breaks what you left on the floor. Yes, I said. He was. I didn't mean it like that. How did Claire come to believe I insisted on doing these things? She doesn't think you insisted. You just said she thinks I'm too involved. Because you are. Even when we ask, you take over. Give me an example. The tasting. I almost laughed. I tasted. You corrected the catering manager in front of everybody. She had Richard's meal marked gluten-free. You asked me to make sure it was low sodium. You could have told me privately. You were sitting beside me. That's not the point. Then I don't know what the point is. He was quiet long enough that I heard traffic passing behind him. The point, he said, is that Claire and I need space to figure out how we want things. Then take the space. That email is not space. It's punishment. No, Evan. Punishment would be promising to do the welcome bags and then not doing them. I gave them back 7 weeks before the wedding. You'll survive. It's not about the bags. I know. His voice hardened. You're going to make Claire feel unwelcome in this family. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the table. What family? He hung up. I stayed seated with the phone against my ear until it began making the small, disconnected call sound. Then I set it down very carefully. At 9, the framing shop called to say the memorial photographs were ready. I drove across town to pick them up. There were 4. One of Evan's grandparents on their wedding day, one of Claire's grandmother as a young woman, one of Richard's older brother who had died years earlier, and one of my husband, Tom, standing beside a lake in a faded red cap, holding up a fish that was not nearly as large as he later claimed. The shop assistant turned the frame toward me. Is this one your husband? It was. He looks like fun. He cheated at cards. She smiled uncertainly, not sure whether that was affection or complaint. It's a beautiful picture, she said. It was. Tom's grin was uneven, his eyes half closed from the sun. Evan had the same grin when he forgot to control it. I paid the balance, carried the frames to my car, and set them upright across the back seat with towels between them. For one weak moment, I imagined taking Tom's picture home and hanging it in my hallway. Let the memorial table have an empty space. Let somebody notice. Instead, I delivered all 4 to Claire's apartment building. She wasn't home. Evan's car wasn't there either. I left the package with the concierge, texted them both, and took a photograph showing the box on the desk so no one could claim it had disappeared. Claire replied, "Thank you." Evan said nothing. By Sunday morning, I had received 3 messages from relatives about the welcome bags. Joanne had apparently called Diane, who called Lou, who called his sister Marianne, who called me while I was brushing my teeth. I heard there's some confusion about the wedding. Marianne said, "There's no confusion." Joanne said, "You decided not to help. I completed 10 of 11 tasks. That sounds like something you say when you're angry. I am angry." She lowered her voice, although no one was in my bathroom with me. "You know how brides get." "No. How do brides get?" "You know, particular." She asked the groom's mother to leave before a family discussion. Marianne stopped. I had not meant to tell her. The words came out clean and sharp, and once they were in the room, I felt both lighter and ashamed. "Oh," she said. "Yes." "Did Evan leave, too?" "No." Another pause. "Well," she said, "that was stupid of him. It was such a plain judgment that I laughed with toothpaste still in my mouth." At 5 that afternoon, I put on black slacks, a silver blouse, and the gold earrings Claire had chosen. Gail had found tickets to a community orchestra concert downtown. She claimed the second half contained something Russian and loud, which was the full extent of our musical knowledge. I was fastening my watch when the doorbell rang. Evan stood on the porch holding an empty glass casserole container. "I brought this back," he said. "That's mine. You sent lasagna home with me last week." He looked past me toward the kitchen. "You didn't cook?" "I had oatmeal." "For dinner? For breakfast?" He frowned. "It's Sunday." "I'm aware." I thought we could talk. Then you should have called. You wouldn't have answered. You didn't try." A car horn sounded at the curb. Gail waved from behind the wheel, then looked at Evan and stopped waving. He glanced at my clothes. "Where are you going?" "To a concert." His face changed in a way I recognized from his childhood, though I refused to soften the comparison for him. He looked as if the house had failed to be where he left it. "What about dinner?" he asked. I took the casserole dish from his hands. "You're 36, Evan," I said. "I trust you'll think of something." Evan stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. "You're really leaving?" "Gail is waiting. I came over to talk. You came over without calling at dinner time on a Sunday. I brought your dish back. You carried an empty container across town. Let's not nominate you for sainthood." Gail tapped her horn again, one polite little chirp. She leaned across the passenger seat and pointed at her wrist, though she wasn't wearing a watch. Evan looked toward her car. "Does she know?" "Know what?" "About all this. All this happened to me. I'm allowed to tell people." "So you did." "I haven't yet." He blinked. That answer was somehow worse for him. I set the casserole dish inside on the bench, pulled the door shut behind me, and locked it. Evan stayed on the porch while I walked down the path. "We still need to talk," he called. "Then call and make a plan. Since when do I need an appointment to see my own mother?" I turned at the sidewalk. "You don't need an appointment to see me. You need an invitation if you expect dinner." Gail waited until I had buckled my seatbelt before she said, "Would you like me to run him over a little?" "No." "Just his foot?" "Drive." She pulled away slowly enough to make clear that mercy had been my decision, not hers. In the side mirror, Evan stood at the end of my walkway with his hands in his pockets. He had left the porch light on. I almost asked Gail to stop so I could go back and switch it off. Instead, I looked forward. Gail lasted 4 blocks. "All right," she said. "Who died?" "No one." "Then who are we pretending didn't do something awful?" I turned toward her. She shrugged. "You wore lipstick." "I wear lipstick. You wore the dark one. That's either church on Easter or controlled fury. The community orchestra was performing at the renovated Grant Theater, an old brick building that had once shown movies for a quarter. Gail parked in a garage across the street, and neither of us mentioned Evan again until intermission. She bought 2 plastic cups of white wine from the lobby bar. Mine cost $14 and tasted like the water left in a vase after the flowers died. "This is terrible," I said. "It's cultured. It's warm. That's how they know it's European." We stood beneath a chandelier made of glass pieces that looked ready to fall. Around us, people discussed the music with serious expressions. Gail watched a man in a velvet jacket say the word tonality 3 times. "Now," she said. "Tell me," I told her. I did not dramatize it. I repeated Claire's words and Evan's. I explained the folder, the email, the 11 green boxes on the task list. Gail listened without interrupting, which frightened me more than any reaction she could have had. When I finished, she took a long swallow of bad wine. "I don't like her," she said. "You barely know her." "I know enough for tonight. I liked her. That's inconvenient. She's not usually like that. People are always like what they do, Marlene. They may be other things too." I looked down at my cup. Gail bumped my shoulder with hers. "And your son is an idiot." "He's not an idiot. He let his fiancée eject his mother from a family meeting. I didn't say he was smart yesterday. He learned this from Tom. That irritated me. Tom would never have let anybody treat his mother that way. No, Tom would have let his mother treat everybody else that way and then gone to the garage." I laughed before I could stop myself. Gail knew the parts of my marriage that nostalgia edited out. Tom had been funny, affectionate, and capable of pretending not to hear conflict from 6 feet away. If tension entered a room, he found a broken hinge somewhere that urgently needed his attention. "Evan hates conflict," I said. "So do smoke alarms. They still make noise when the house is burning. He's trying to keep Claire happy by making you unhappy. He probably thought I'd get over it. Will you?" I watched people begin moving back toward the theater doors. Yes, I said. I'm just not going back to the same place when I do. Gail's expression softened. Good. The second half was indeed Russian and loud. For 40 minutes, brass instruments argued with one another, while a man behind us breathed through his nose like an industrial pump. I understood almost none of it. Still, when the final note ended, I felt wrung out in a useful way. On the drive home, Gail asked whether I wanted her to come inside. No, I'm fine. That answer has been used at several funerals and at least one shipwreck. I'm tired, Gail. All right. Call me tomorrow. I will, not a text. Yes, ma'am. My porch light was off when we pulled up. Evan must have switched it off before leaving. Inside, the casserole dish sat where I had placed it. I carried it to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There was no lasagna, of course. No roast chicken, no soup, no foil-wrapped plate waiting to be warmed. I found half a block of cheddar and ate 2 slices standing in front of the open door. I wondered what Evan had done for dinner. Then I closed the refrigerator before I could turn wondering into responsibility. The catering manager called the next afternoon while I was pruning dead stems from the hydrangeas. Mrs. Ellis, I'm sorry to bother you, she said. We're finalizing the tasting notes, and I had a question about the family roles. Her name was Natalie. She had worn a charcoal suit at Bellwether and managed 6 opinionated adults with the calm of an air traffic controller. You should speak to Claire. I did. She said you provided the recipe. The recipe is correct. Yes, but the kitchen needs to know whether the onion should be sautéed before it goes into the dough. Mr. Ellis said you were coordinating the family items. Evan was not Mr. Ellis. He was Mr. Porter, like his father. I almost corrected her, then decided we already had enough family items. The onion should be cooked first, I said, but they chose the focaccia. There was a pause. Our notes say both breads are being considered. Then Claire and Evan will need to decide. Of course, I apologize. You don't need to. After we hung up, I cut 3 healthy stems along with the dead ones because I wasn't paying attention. That evening, Claire called. Her name appeared on the screen, and I considered letting it ring. Then I remembered telling Evan to make a plan if he wanted to talk. Punishing Claire for calling would have been convenient hypocrisy. Hello? Hi, Marlene. Hello, Claire. She sounded as though she had prepared several openings and disliked all of them. Do you have a minute? I do. I'm trying to get the welcome bags sorted out. All right? Evan said there was a list. Not from me. He thought you had started one. He sent me 3 pictures he found online. One had bottled water, aspirin, pretzels, and something called an artisan recovery kit. What is an artisan recovery kit? I assumed a paper bag with better branding. She made a small sound that might have been a laugh, then caught it. So you hadn't ordered anything? No. He said you wanted to handle it. He asked me to handle it. When? Last month. The Tuesday after your dress fitting. The silence lengthened. Are you sure? I almost said, why would I lie? Instead, I looked at the hydrangea stems lying on newspaper across my counter. Yes, because he told me you had ideas and were excited about doing them. I had ideas after he asked. That's not how he presented it. I can't help how he presented it. Her voice tightened. You can understand why I might have felt like you were taking over. I can understand why you might feel that if somebody told you I was volunteering for work, you had not offered me. You did offer opinions. You asked for some of them, not all of them. That's true. I heard her shift the phone. A cabinet door closed in the background. For example, she said, Thanksgiving. What about it? You've made it clear it's your holiday. I said I've hosted for 31 years. Exactly. That was a fact, Claire, not a border dispute. You also said the Republic would survive a new arrangement because your mother announced she had bought furniture for an arrangement none of you had discussed with me. She bought a table leaf. She brought it up at a menu tasting. That's what families talk about. Apparently, only after I leave. The line went quiet. I regretted the sentence as soon as it was out, not because it was false, because it was sharp enough to end the conversation before we reached anything useful. Claire inhaled slowly. I didn't call to fight. Why did you call? I told you. The welcome bags. No. You called because Evan's version of the welcome bags didn't match mine. You're making it sound sinister. I don't think it's sinister. I think it's easy. What does that mean? It means Evan likes things taken care of. If he tells you I need to feel involved, you don't resent him for asking me. If he tells me you're overwhelmed, I don't resent you for needing help. Everybody stays grateful to him. That's a pretty ugly interpretation of your own son. You asked me. I asked about bottled water and pretzels, and now you have your answer. She hung up without saying goodbye. I set the phone on the counter and swept the cut stems into a paper bag. My hands had started shaking, which annoyed me. I had not shouted. Neither had she. Yet the kitchen felt crowded with everything we had both managed not to say. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Claire. I answered. Did Evan ask you to find that roll recipe? She said. Yes. He told me you brought it up because it was important to you. It was important to him when he called me 3 times looking for it. 3 times? He was afraid the caterer would miss the deadline. I heard her sit down. And the hotel rooms, he asked me. The dietary calls, he asked me. The memorial photographs? Claire, what exactly has he been telling you? She did not answer for several seconds. Then she said that he was trying to give you things to do so you wouldn't feel left out. I leaned against the counter. Outside, a gust of wind rolled my empty paper bag across the patio. I never asked him for a job, I said. Well, he seems to think you did. He also seemed to think I'd have dinner waiting for him last night. What? He came over at 5 without calling. For dinner? He brought back an empty casserole dish. Despite herself, Claire laughed. It came out once, surprised and sharp. Then she went quiet again. I need to talk to him, she said. Yes, this doesn't mean what happened at the tasting was all my fault. No, and it doesn't mean you haven't been over-involved sometimes. I'm sure I have. You say that very calmly. I'm not calm. Another silence settled between us, different from the others. I don't know what to do with this, she said. For the first time since the tasting, she did not sound polished. She sounded tired and a little frightened. I could have made it easy for her. I could have said Evan meant well, that weddings made everyone foolish, that none of it mattered. I had been making things easy for other people most of my life. You start, I said, by asking him why he needed both of us to misunderstand each other. Then I ended the call. My phone rang before I had finished cleaning the dirt from under my fingernails. What did you say to Claire? Evan did not say hello. The truth. Which truth, Mom? That's a strange question. You know what I mean. She's acting like I've been lying to her for months. Have you? I was trying to keep everybody happy. By telling her I asked to do work you gave me? I never said you asked. She says you did. I said you liked being involved. That is not the same thing, and you know it. He made a frustrated sound. Can we not do this on the phone? Of course. Call me tomorrow and we'll choose a time. There was a pause. You're serious about appointments now? I'm serious about not having people arrive at my house and expect me to be ready for whatever they need. Fine. Coffee tomorrow. 10. I have a dental cleaning at 10. Since when? Since November, 11:30? That works. We met at a diner near his office, the kind of place with chrome around the tables and a glass case of pies rotating slowly by the register. Evan was already in a booth when I arrived. He had ordered coffee for me, 2 creams, no sugar. That small kindness irritated me because it reminded me how well love and carelessness could live in the same person. He stood halfway, as though uncertain whether we were hugging. I slid into the booth before either of us had to decide. You look nice, he said. I had my teeth cleaned. He almost smiled. A waitress appeared and he ordered a cheeseburger. I asked for a bowl of tomato soup. You should get something else, he said. Their soup isn't great. Then why are we here? It's close to work, of course. He leaned back. Are we going to fight about every sentence? That depends how many of your sentences require it. See, That thing you do. What thing? Make little comments, then act like you're being perfectly reasonable. I folded my paper napkin across my lap. All right, I'll ask directly. Why did you tell Claire I wanted to manage wedding tasks? I didn't. Why did she think that? Because you always manage things. That's still not an answer. He rubbed both hands over his face. There were dark circles beneath his eyes. His hair, usually neat for work, had been pushed back and allowed to stay there. I told her you were having a hard time with the wedding. Was I? You didn't say it, but I know you. No. Tell me what you told her. He stared at the sugar packets in the holder. I said you were excited and probably needed to feel useful. Needed. I didn't mean it as an insult. What did I need relief from? His jaw tightened. Mom, say it. Being alone. The waitress arrived with our food. She placed the soup in front of me, the burger in front of him, and asked if we needed anything else. A trapdoor, I said. She looked at me. More napkins, Evan said quickly. When she left, he lowered his voice. Why would you say that? It was a joke. She didn't know that. I think she did. You do this when you're uncomfortable. I'm aware. Then stop. I picked up my spoon. The tomato soup was the color of traffic cones. You told the woman you're marrying that your widowed mother was filling her empty life with your wedding. I didn't say it like that. How did you say it? I said Dad's been gone. You live alone. And Sunday dinners and family stuff are important to you. All of that is true. Exactly. But you used the truth to tell a lie. He pushed his plate away before taking a bite. What lie? That I was the one asking for all of this. That you were generously giving me chores so I wouldn't collapse into my soup. I was trying to help you feel included. You helped by asking me to do things. I was included by doing them. Then, when the actual family discussion happened, I was sent home. I didn't know Claire was going to ask you to leave. I stopped with the spoon halfway to my mouth. That was the first time he had said it. You didn't? No. Did you know there would be a discussion? Yes. Did you know her parents were staying? Yes. Did you know the discussion was about holidays and family expectations? His eyes lifted to mine. You spoke to Claire. She told me only that you'd been misrepresenting my involvement. I guessed the rest from Joanne's table leaf. He looked toward the diner entrance. What else was it about? It doesn't matter now. It mattered enough to exclude me. It was about us needing boundaries after we're married. What boundaries? Sunday dinners, holidays, dropping by, calls. I stared at him. You dropped by my house. Sometimes. You came last Sunday expecting food. That was different. You call me. I know. I have never appeared at your apartment without being invited. No, but you make comments when we miss dinner. I ask whether you're coming so I know how much to cook. You say things like, I guess I'll put the chicken in the freezer. What should I do with the chicken, Evan? He leaned forward. It's the tone. Whose tone? Mine or the one you repeat to Claire? He sat back again. Our extra napkins arrived. The waitress set them down and retreated with the speed of someone who had correctly identified a family meal. I tasted the soup. Evan was right. It wasn't great. Did you tell Claire I objected to changing Thanksgiving? I asked. I said you'd probably be hurt. Before asking me. I know how you feel about traditions. You know I like hosting. You do not know whether I would be hurt because you did not ask. Would you have been? I thought about the long dining table at my house. Tom at one end pretending he had cooked because he carved the turkey. Evan stealing crisp pieces of skin from the platter. The first Thanksgiving after Tom died, when I burned the gravy because I kept turning to speak to a man who was no longer in the kitchen. Yes, I said. I might have been. Evan gave a bitter little laugh. There. That's what I'm talking about. You think the possibility of my feelings justifies lying in advance? I didn't lie. You turned feelings I might have into demands I never made. I was trying to prevent a problem. No, you were trying to avoid seeing one. His face closed. For a while, we ate. or I ate. He dismantled his burger with a fork and left the pieces across his plate. Finally, he said, "Claire stayed with her parents last night. I put down my spoon. Why? Because she says she needs space." "What did you tell her?" "The same things I'm telling you, that you were trying to keep us happy." "Yes. And did it work better when you said it to her?" His eyes flashed. "You sound pleased." "I'm not. You never wanted this wedding. That's not true. You wanted a wedding where you got to be part of every decision. I wanted a wedding where my son behaved as if I belonged to him in public as much as I belonged to him when he needed something." A woman in the booth behind Evan stopped talking. I lowered my voice. He looked down. "I just need you to tell Claire you were more involved than she asked you to be," he said. "I was." His head came up. "So tell her." "I already did." "You did?" I told her some of my opinions were uninvited. "That doesn't erase what you did. It would help if you apologized." "For what?" "For making her feel like she had no room. If Claire tells me I did that, I'll listen. I will not give you an apology to carry home like a peace offering so nobody examines your behavior." He pushed out of the booth. I knew this was a mistake. "Sit down. I have to go back to work. You have 20 minutes. I don't want to spend them like this." He pulled out his wallet and placed 2 20s on the table. I looked at the money. "You don't have to pay for me." "I know." "Then why are you?" He laughed once without humor. "Not everything means something, Mom." He left before I could answer. The 2 20s were too much for a burger and soup. I left the waitress a generous tip for the trapdoor joke and drove home. On the way, I passed St. Matthew's where Tom's funeral had been held. The front steps were empty, except for a man eating from a paper bag. At the red light, I remembered Evan standing beside me 7 years earlier, 29 years old and shaking so hard I had to hold his hand with both of mine. After the service, he came home with me and stayed for 10 days. He slept on the living room couch, even though his old bedroom was available. Every morning, I found the television on with the volume muted. Neither of us knew how to be alone yet. Sunday dinners had started because of him. The first Sunday, after he went back to his apartment, he appeared at 5 carrying a 6-pack and asked what we were eating. I had not planned to cook. I made spaghetti. The next week, I bought chicken. After that, it became a rhythm, then a tradition, then apparently evidence against me. But Evan had not invented my need out of nothing. There were nights I watched the clock, waiting for his headlights. There were Sundays when his cancellation left so much silence in the house that I kept the television on through dinner. I had packed leftovers he did not request and solved problems he had not quite asked me to solve. Being useful had given my grief a schedule. That did not make his story true. It made it close enough to truth that he could live inside it comfortably. When I got home, a florist's van was parked at my curb. A young man carried a vase of white roses up the walk. For Marlene Ellis? Yes. The card was from Claire. "I'm sorry the tasting became uncomfortable. I hope we can move forward with more understanding on all sides." I read it twice. The flowers were beautiful. The apology was not. I set the vase on the dining room table, where Evan's water ring still marked the wood. Then I called Claire. "Thank you for the roses," I said when she answered. "You're welcome. They don't fix it." Her silence went cold. I wasn't trying to fix it with flowers. What were you trying to do? Reach out. You apologized for discomfort. I said I was sorry. You said the tasting became uncomfortable. It didn't become anything by itself. "I don't know what you want from me, Marlene. I want you to say what you did." Her voice sharpened. "Evan lied to me." "Yes. And then you asked me to leave, because I believed him. You believed a version of me that made exclusion feel acceptable. That is on him. The exclusion is on you. So none of this is your fault." "I didn't say that." "You certainly sound like it." I touched one of the roses. Its outer petal had already begun to brown. "You had every right to want limits," I said. "You had every right to tell me I was too involved. You did not have the right to call a discussion about my son's future a family discussion and ask me to leave it. I was angry. So was I. I still left quietly. Another cold silence. I have to go, she said. All right. I'm trying, Marlene. Try without hiding inside grammar. She ended the call. I carried the roses into the kitchen, trimmed the brown petal, and placed the vase beside the sink. For the next 4 days, neither Claire nor Evan contacted me. On the 5th, Joanne called. Claire has postponed the final venue meeting, she said. She's also told Evan she won't set another date until they deal with this. I gripped the phone tighter. The wedding? I asked. No, not yet. Not yet hung between us. Then Joanne said, I think you and I need to have lunch. Lunch sounds fine, I said. But if this is about convincing Claire to keep the wedding on schedule, I'm not the person you need. I don't know who that person is right now. Probably Claire. Joanne sighed. Tomorrow at 12:30? There's a cafe near the Botanical Gardens. I know it. I'll make a reservation. It was exactly the sort of place Joanne would choose for a difficult conversation. Neutral, tasteful, and too public for anyone to throw a chair. She was already seated when I arrived, wearing a navy jacket and a silk scarf printed with tiny white birds. A pot of tea sat between us. She had ordered mine without asking, which I decided not to treat as symbolic. I hope Earl Grey is all right, she said. It's fine. You look well. So do you. We had entered the stage of female conflict where compliments were exchanged like documents between attorneys. The server took our orders. Joanne chose a pear salad. I chose quiche because I did not trust a pear to sustain me through whatever was coming. For a minute, she stirred her tea without drinking it. Claire told me about your call. I assumed she would. She was very upset. I was too. I know. No, Joanne. You saw. Her spoon stopped. The cafe was full of soft sounds, china touching saucers, low conversation, a coffee grinder starting and stopping behind the counter. At the next table, 2 women in hiking clothes were comparing photographs on a phone. Joanne set down her spoon. You're right, she said. I saw. Did you know she was going to ask me to leave? I knew she wanted the 4 of us to talk. That isn't what I asked. No, I didn't know exactly how she planned to handle it, but you knew I wasn't included. She looked toward the window. Yes, the answer came without decoration. I respected it more than the roses. Why? Because Claire believed you were having trouble accepting that the marriage would change things. Based on what? Based on what Evan told her, and some things she observed. What things? Sunday dinners? The calls? How often you were involved in decisions? The decisions he asked me to help with. I know that now. The server brought our meals. My quiche sat beside a pile of greens wearing no visible dressing. Joanne thanked the server, unfolded her napkin again, and waited until we were alone. I should have questioned it, she said. Yes. Her mouth tightened. You could allow me to finish. I'm listening. I should have questioned why every example came through Evan. I didn't. Claire was frustrated and I was protective. So you agreed to a family meeting that excluded part of the family. I agreed to support my daughter. Those aren't the same thing. No, she said. They aren't. I cut into the quiche. It contained mushrooms, goat cheese, and 1 determined piece of spinach. Joanne watched me take a bite. I didn't call you here to defend the tasting. What did you call me here to do? Help me understand Evan. I put down my fork. You've known him for over a year. I know his manners. I know his job. I know he brings wine when invited to dinner and offers to carry heavy things. I know he is charming when nothing difficult is happening. That's not nothing. It's not enough to marry. There was no cruelty in her voice. That made the statement heavier. I folded my hands in my lap. What has Claire told you? That when she confronted him, he kept explaining why his choices were reasonable instead of admitting they were choices. He said he was managing 2 strong personalities. He said he was protecting both of you from unnecessary conflict by creating necessary conflict. That was my observation. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Joanne continued, Then he said he had only asked you to do things because otherwise you would feel excluded. Claire asked why he had told her you volunteered. He said that was basically the same thing. That sounds like him. You say that very fondly. I love him. Do you believe love means you should soften this for him? The question was sharper than I expected. No. Are you sure? I looked at her. She picked up her fork, moved 2 slices of pear from one side of her plate to the other, and said, "You did an enormous amount of work for this wedding while allowing him to pretend it was your idea." I didn't know he was pretending, but you knew he was bringing every request instead of Claire asking you directly. I thought he was helping her, because that is what you preferred to believe. The irritation rose in me quickly. Be careful, Joanne. I am being careful. Claire excluded you, and it was wrong. Evan misled both of you, and it was wrong. But you asked why I wanted lunch. I want to know whether you intend to keep rescuing him while insisting you've stopped. I haven't rescued him. You called Uncle Lou the same night. I had promised. You delivered the photographs. I had promised. You could have told them to find someone else. And turn Tom's picture into a weapon? No. Then don't criticize me for keeping my word. Her expression shifted. I'm not criticizing that. You are suggesting I caused this by being helpful. I'm suggesting helpfulness can be a form of control. The sentence sat between us. I wanted to reject it. I wanted to list all the things I had done without recognition or return. I wanted to tell her how many times Evan had asked, how often Claire had benefited, how quietly I had worked. Instead, I remembered buying chicken before Evan said he was coming. Sometimes, I said, helpfulness is how people avoid asking whether they're wanted. Joanne's face softened, but I did not want softness from her yet. I didn't force him to eat dinner at my house, I added. No. I didn't force him to call me. No. And I did not force Claire to send me out of that room. No, Joanne said, you did not. We ate for a few minutes. Then she said, I bought the table leaf in January. I looked up. It really was on sale, she said. I laughed once, but I also bought it because Claire told me she and Evan would spend Thanksgiving with us. She said they had already decided. They hadn't told me. I know. Did she know that? I don't think she asked. There it was. Not a conspiracy. Just 4 adults making arrangements around conversations none of them wanted to have. Claire is my only daughter, Joanne said. I've imagined having her home for holidays after she married. Maybe I made my wishes sound like plans. Maybe. All right, I did. And when you thought I wanted Thanksgiving, I thought you were being possessive. While you were buying furniture. She gave me a dry look. The leaf fits in a closet. Possessiveness would have been a dining room addition. That surprised a laugh out of me. For the first time, she smiled. Then the smile faded. Claire moved some of her things back to our house, she said. Is the wedding postponed? The venue meeting is. She hasn't made a decision about the ceremony. How is Evan? Angry. Frightened, I expect. He called Richard and asked him to talk sense into her. I closed my eyes briefly. Richard refused, Joanne said. Good. You don't sound surprised. Tom used to ask me to interpret every uncomfortable conversation for him. Evan watched. Did you do it? Yes. Why? Because Tom was a good man who could repair a furnace during a snowstorm but would rather chew glass than tell his mother she'd offended somebody. And Evan learned the room would be made comfortable for him. He did. Joanne sipped her tea. So what happens now? They talk, and if they can't, then they shouldn't get married on schedule just because invitations were printed. You realize how much upheaval that would cause. Yes, relatives have booked flights. They can cancel them. Some arrangements can't be canceled. I'm sorry. She studied me. Are you? I'm sorry Claire is hurt. I'm sorry Evan is frightened. I'm sorry you and Richard are caught in it. I'm not sorry she stopped long enough to look at the man she's marrying. Joanne leaned back. I came here hoping you would tell me this was unlike him. It is unlike the best of him. That's not the same thing. No. She paid for her salad before I could object. I paid for my quiche by leaving cash beneath my plate. On the sidewalk, we stood awkwardly beside a planter filled with purple pansies. "I am sorry I stayed at that table," Joanne said. I looked at her. "I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere," she continued. "That was convenient. Yes, I don't expect you to forgive me over lunch. That's good." She nodded once. Then, to my surprise, she hugged me. It was not a warm hug. It was brief and stiff, like two people protecting injured ribs. Still, it was honest. Evan was waiting in my driveway when I got home. He got out of his car before I had turned off the engine. "You had lunch with Joanne." "She invited me." "What did you tell her?" I stepped out and locked my car. "You should stop opening conversations that way. Claire's mother called me and said I need to take responsibility. Do you? You're turning everybody against me." I didn't tell Joanne anything Claire hadn't already told her. "She says you think I learned this from Dad." The betrayal in his voice startled me. That was part of a longer conversation. Dad isn't here to defend himself. I didn't attack him. "You told my future mother-in-law he manipulated people." "No. I said he avoided conflict and I often helped him do it. And now I'm just like him, in some ways." He followed me up the walk. "You've always talked about Dad like he was this wonderful husband." He was. "So? Which is it?" "Both." Evan stopped. I turned to face him. "Your father was generous, funny, loyal, and frightened of disappointing people. Sometimes that fear made him dishonest. I loved him anyway. Loving someone does not require lying about them after they die. This is unbelievable. What is? You're willing to drag Dad into this, embarrass Claire, turn Joanne against me. I did not turn Claire against you. You told her I made both of you misunderstand each other. You did. You could fix this with one call. No." His face tightened. "If you loved me, you would care whether my relationship survives. I care deeply. Then help me. By telling Claire she misunderstood what you deliberately allowed her to believe. By telling her this has gotten blown out of proportion. It hasn't." He stared at me. Then he said, "Maybe I need some space from you." The words were meant to make me reach for him. I could feel the old response rising before I stopped it. "All right," I said. He stood on my walkway waiting. I unlocked the front door. "How much space?" I asked. His expression changed. "I don't know. When you do, you have my number." I went inside and closed the door, softly enough that he could not call it a slam. For several seconds after I closed the door, I stood with my hand on the knob. I could hear Evan's shoes scrape against the concrete. Then his car door opened, shut, and opened again. He had forgotten something or changed his mind. I waited for the bell. The car door shut a second time. His engine started. I watched from the narrow window beside the door as he backed out. He did not look toward the house. The first Sunday without him, I roasted a chicken. I did not decide to roast a chicken. My hands simply removed it from the refrigerator, seasoned it, and put it in the oven at 3:30. At 4, I peeled enough potatoes for 2 people before catching myself. I put 1 potato back. At 5:15, the chicken was resting on the counter, the skin crisp and golden. I set 1 place at the dining table. Then I moved my plate to the kitchen because the empty chair across from me felt theatrical. Halfway through dinner, I got angry at the chicken. It was too large. It smelled like 31 years of Sundays. I imagined eating it cold for a week, tearing pieces from the bones every time I opened the refrigerator, and by Thursday I would resent the bird for surviving longer than my resolve. I called Gail. "Did someone die?" she asked. "No, I made poultry." That was my second guess. "Do you want half a chicken? Dark meat?" "Gail, I'm establishing terms." She arrived 15 minutes later with 2 storage containers and a bottle of wine. She took 1 look at my set face and did not ask about Evan. We stood at the counter dividing food. "Give me more potatoes," she said. "You said you were avoiding starch. I was abandoned by discipline. You were disciplined for 6 hours. It was exhausting." She put the lid on one container, then looked around the kitchen. Where are the roses? They died. They were 3 days old. They were weak. You threw them out. I removed a declining arrangement from my home. Gail nodded solemnly. The dark lipstick has spread to the flowers. After she left, I packed the remaining chicken into smaller portions. I froze 2. I ate one for lunch the next day and did not consider it an emotional event. Evan did not call. He usually sent me links to articles he had not read or photographs of products he was considering buying. He had once sent 6 pictures of nearly identical lamps and then purchased a 7th. Now my phone stayed quiet. I discovered how often I reached for it because of him. A storm moved through on Tuesday, and I almost texted to warn him about flooding near his office. On Wednesday, the grocery store stocked the coffee he liked at half price. Friday was the anniversary of the day Tom taught him to drive, though I doubted Evan remembered. Each time, I composed the first sentence in my head. Each time, I stopped. Space was easy to announce in a driveway. It was harder to live inside. Other people filled it badly. Diane called to tell me the hotel would not refund her sister's deposit if the wedding date changed. Mary Ann called because Diane had called her. Uncle Lou called to ask whether the possibility of postponement meant he should cancel his pillow. I don't know, I told him. The hotel pillow could be one of those thick ones. Then bring yours. But if there's no wedding, Lou, bring the pillow home again. He thought about that. That makes sense. I was glad I could still be useful at the level of pillow transportation. The second Sunday, I bought 1 salmon fillet. The fish counter clerk wrapped it in brown paper and asked, "Just the one?" "Yes." He looked at me sympathetically, which made me want to request an entire tuna out of spite. At home, I cooked the salmon in a small pan. I did not set the dining table. I ate in the kitchen with the radio on and called Gail afterward. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to tell her about the fish clerk. "That poor man," she said. "He may never recover from your solitary salmon." I didn't say anything to him. "Your face said it. My face is fine. You have a very loud face." On Monday, I received an automated email from the wedding planning site reminding me that welcome bag assembly was scheduled in 18 days. Beneath the reminder was a smiling photograph of Evan and Claire standing in an apple orchard. He had one arm around her waist. She was looking at him instead of the camera. I deleted the reminder. Then I recovered it from the trash, removed myself from the task, and deleted it again. There was no reason for Claire to receive a notification saying I had failed to complete something I had already returned. That kind of detail was exactly how I got into trouble. Even while withdrawing, I wanted my withdrawal to be neat, efficient, and easy for everyone else to process. I shut the laptop and went outside. The hydrangeas needed no attention. I found some anyway. Joanne called that evening. "Claire has told the venue they need to release the date," she said. I sat on the back steps. "When did she decide?" "This afternoon." "How is she?" "Calm," which worries me more than if she were crying. "Does Evan know?" "He knows." "What did he say?" "That she was overreacting because you and she had gotten off on the wrong foot." I closed my eyes. Joanne continued. "Richard told him to stop blaming the nearest woman. Good for Richard. He also told Evan he could come over for dinner if he wanted to talk. Did he?" "No." The wind shifted through the yard, lifting the smallest leaves on the hydrangeas. "Have you heard from him?" she asked. "Not since he asked for space." "I'm sorry. So am I. I expect you'll start getting calls. I already have. If anyone from my side bothers you, tell me. What will you do? Give them Richard's number." He enjoys sounding stern. That made me smile. Before we hung up, Joanne said, "For what it's worth, I told Claire that postponing was sensible. Did she ask?" "No." "Then we're both works in progress." Joanne laughed quietly. "Apparently." The official news moved through the family by morning. Nobody announced it publicly, but weddings have their own underground communication system. By lunch, my cousin Ruth in Arizona knew. Ruth had not attended a family event in 11 years, but she called with great concern about the inconvenience. "Can't you get them in a room and make everybody calm down?" she asked. "They have been in rooms. You know what I mean. You've always been the one who smooths things over. That may be part of the problem. Well, somebody has to." "No." "What do you mean, no? I mean, nobody has to smooth this over. Evan has to be honest. Claire has to decide whether she trusts him. I cannot do those things for them. You could encourage her. I'm not going to persuade a woman to marry my son on a schedule she no longer believes in." Ruth gasped as if I had suggested arson. "You don't want them to break up, do you?" "Of course not. You don't sound very upset. I'm not performing it correctly for you." She ended the call soon afterward. That evening, I took the wedding invitation from the mantel. It was thick cream paper with raised lettering. Claire Bennett and Evan Porter requested the pleasure of my company at 5 o'clock on the second Saturday in June. My own son's name and mine appeared nowhere together. I had been pleased when it arrived. I remembered running my finger over his name, thinking how Tom would have held the card at arm's length because he refused to wear reading glasses. Now the date looked like a bruise. I placed the invitation in the desk drawer. I did not throw it away. On the third Sunday, I did not cook at all. Gail and I went to an afternoon flea market in an old warehouse where every object was either vintage or something I had thrown out in 1998. She bought a green glass bowl. "You owned this bowl," I told her. "I owned a similar bowl. You served potato salad in it for 15 years. It broke. So you paid $30 for its ghost? The color makes me happy. I bought nothing," which Gail called emotional repression. Afterward, we ate grilled cheese sandwiches at a counter inside the warehouse. Mine came with pickles that tasted strongly of cinnamon. "Why would anyone do that to a pickle?" I asked. "To remind you life is uncertain." When I got home, Claire was sitting on my front step. She stood as Gail's car pulled away. She wore jeans, a gray sweater, and no makeup. Her engagement ring was still on her finger. "I called," she said. "My phone was in my purse. I can come back. You're here now." Inside, I offered coffee. She asked for water. I poured 2 glasses and carried them to the dining room. Claire sat in Evan's usual chair. She noticed the water ring beneath her glass and moved it onto a coaster. "I postponed the wedding," she said. "I heard from my mother." "Yes, of course." She wrapped both hands around the glass. "I'm not canceling it," she said. "All right. I just can't stand in front of 200 people and promise to trust him when I don't know if I do. That makes sense. You don't have to sound relieved. I'm not relieved. You didn't want me to marry him until we dealt with this. I wanted you to see him clearly, and you think I didn't. I think you saw what he showed you." Her jaw tightened. Which was what? A liar? A man who wanted to be whatever each person needed so no one would be angry with him. He made me angry. Yes, the strategy has flaws. For a moment, her mouth twitched. Then she looked down. "He says, if you and I would stop making this about the tasting, everything would settle down. It stopped being about the tasting when we learned why you wanted me gone. He says, you're punishing him. He asked for space. He says you let him walk away." I stared at her. What was I supposed to do? Chase his car? He expected you to call. I know. Claire looked toward the kitchen. The white roses were gone, but the clear vase remained beside the sink. "I thought your whole life revolved around him," she said. The words were blunt enough to be useful. Parts of it did. "He told me Sundays were the only thing keeping you going. That's dramatic. He said you'd never recovered after Tom died." I flinched at hearing my husband's name in her mouth, attached to a diagnosis Evan had made. "I recovered differently," I said. "He made it sound like marrying me was going to leave you with nothing. And you believed him. I saw how much you did for him. So you blamed the person doing it. I thought you wouldn't let him grow up. I may not have." She looked surprised. "I liked being needed," I said. "Sometimes I did things before he asked. Sometimes I made it easier for him to stay helpless because his helplessness kept him close. Then he wasn't completely wrong. No, that's what made his story effective. Claire leaned back. If I end this, she said, he'll blame you. Probably. Will you blame me? No. If I marry him later? No. You have an answer for everything. No. I have an answer for what isn't mine to decide. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. I came here hoping you'd tell me he's a good man. He is. She laughed bitterly. That's supposed to help? Good people can still hurt you. Good is not finished. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, he told me you'd fix this. I know. What if you're the only one who can? I shook my head. If I fix it, I said, you'll never know whether he can. Claire lowered her face into her hands. I stayed on my side of the table. I did not move to comfort her, though every trained part of me wanted to. After a while, she sat upright and wiped beneath her eyes. I hate your cinnamon pickles, she said. I looked at the paper cup Gail had made me bring home. They're an assault. Claire took one anyway. She bit into it, winced, and for one strange second, we both laughed. Then my phone rang on the table between us. Evan's name filled the screen. Claire looked at me. I let it ring. Not to punish him, not to prove anything, because if he wanted to speak to the woman sitting across from me, he needed to call her. The phone stopped after 4 rings. A second later, Claire's purse began buzzing on the chair beside her. She stared at it. He's calling you now, I said. I know. Are you going to answer? Are you? No. Then don't ask me. That's fair. Her phone stopped. Mine rang again. Claire looked at my screen, then at me. He always does that. Does what? Calls until someone gives him what he wants. He used to call 3 times when it was an emergency. What counted as an emergency? Once a bat got into his apartment. That's an emergency. He was standing outside. The bat had the apartment. Claire smiled despite herself. My phone stopped again. A notification appeared, showing a voicemail. You should listen to it, she said, after you leave. Because it might be about me? Because you shouldn't have to hear what he says to his mother when he thinks you aren't here. Her expression changed. That's an interesting boundary. I'm learning. She stood and carried her glass to the kitchen. I heard water run, then the small click as she set the glass in the dishwasher instead of leaving it in the sink. Even upset, Claire could not abandon a task halfway. At the front door, she turned. I'm not asking you to choose me over him. Good. But if he tells you I'm cruel for postponing, I'll tell him the decision belongs to you. That's not the same as defending me. No. Her shoulders lowered. Would you defend me? If he lies about you, yes. If he has feelings you don't like, no. She nodded slowly. I think I understand. You don't have to today. She stepped onto the porch. Her car was parked at the curb beneath the sycamore, pale green flakes scattered across the windshield. Marlene. Yes? I'm sorry I asked you to leave. The words came quickly, almost angrily. I waited. She looked down the street. I'm not ready to say it the way you want. There isn't a password. You know what I mean. Yes. She left before I could say more. I watched her brush debris from her windshield with the side of her hand. When her car turned the corner, I closed the door and listened to Evan's voicemail. Mom, it's me. Obviously. I know you're angry, but Claire postponed the wedding and won't talk to me unless it's on her terms. I need to know if that's what you wanted. Call me. There was no please this time. I replayed it once, not because I had missed anything. I was waiting for concern about Claire to appear in a sentence built entirely around what she was doing to him. It didn't. I texted, I can talk tomorrow at 6. My house. He responded immediately. Why not tonight? Because tomorrow works for me. 3 dots appeared. Fine. At 5:40 the next afternoon, I opened the refrigerator and nearly took out ingredients for dinner. I closed it again. Evan arrived at 5:52 carrying a paper sack. I brought sandwiches, he said. It was progress of a very small, very edible kind. Thank you. He set the sack on the kitchen counter. Turkey for you. No mustard. You remembered? I remember things? I know. We ate at the kitchen table. He had also brought chips, 2 bottles of water, and a chocolate cookie cut in half inside a plastic box. Did they sell only half? I asked. I bought one. And had it divided? I thought we could share it. The gesture was so boyish that my throat tightened. I reached for a chip and concentrated on chewing. He looked tired. His face had lost the softness it carried when life was going well. There was a small nick on his chin from shaving, and his shirt cuffs were wrinkled. I did not offer to iron them. Was Claire here yesterday, he asked. Yes, I saw her car when I drove past. You drove past my house. I was on my way to the hardware store. The hardware store is in the other direction, the one on Meriden, also in the other direction. He peeled the label from his water bottle. I thought she might come here. Why? Because apparently you two are allies now. We're not allies. You had lunch with Joanne. Claire sat in your dining room for 2 hours. I'm the only person nobody will talk to. I'm talking to you. Because you scheduled me. I offered a time. You accepted. You make me sound like a cable repair. You arrived early. He dropped the bottle label onto his plate. Can we not joke? Yes. The seriousness that followed seemed to make him regret asking. He folded his sandwich wrapper into smaller and smaller squares. Did she tell you she postponed? Yes. Did she tell you why? She doesn't trust how you handle conflict. That's your language. It's hers. She never talked like that before all this. Before all this, she thought I was the conflict. He shook his head. You're enjoying being right. I'm not. Everybody keeps telling me I lied. I didn't sit down and invent some plan. I know. I wasn't trying to turn you against each other. I know. I was trying to make things easier. I know that, too. Then why are you acting like I'm some terrible person? I'm not. You won't help me. That is not the definition of a terrible person. It is when you're my mother. There it was. Not shouted. Not even said with malice. A simple statement of the arrangement he believed we had. I put down my sandwich. What help do you want? Talk to Claire. Tell her I wasn't manipulating her. Were you? No. You gave her false explanations for my behavior so she wouldn't be angry with you. I simplified things. You changed who was responsible because it didn't matter. It mattered to her. Not until you made it matter. I pushed my chair back and carried my plate to the sink. I needed the distance. Behind me, Evan said, Dad would hate this. I gripped the edge of the counter. He would hate seeing us divided over something this stupid. Evan continued. He cared about family. He would tell you to let it go. I turned. Your father once spent an entire Christmas morning in the basement because your grandmother criticized the way I cooked the turkey. Evan frowned. I don't remember that. You were in college. Then why bring it up? Because later he told her he had gone downstairs to fix the furnace. The furnace was fine. He told me he had spoken to her. He had not. That doesn't sound like Dad. It sounds exactly like him. It also doesn't erase every good thing you remember. You're using him to make your point. You brought him into the room. Evan stood. Fine. What would he say then? Since you're the expert, he would probably ask me to call Claire. Exactly. And he would be wrong. His face went still. I dried my hands on a dish towel, though they were not wet. Your father loved you, I said. He protected you from pain whenever he could. Sometimes that meant protecting you from consequences. I helped him. After he died, I kept doing it because taking care of you gave me somewhere to put my grief. I didn't ask you to do that. Sometimes you did. Sometimes you didn't have to. So this is my fault too. I'm telling you I had a part in it. It doesn't sound like it. What do you want me to confess to, Evan? That you made me feel responsible for you. The room went quiet. He looked startled by his own words. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat. Tell me how. He stayed standing. Sunday dinners, he said. If I canceled, you'd say it was fine in that voice. What voice? The one where it wasn't fine. Sometimes it wasn't. That's what I mean. I'd be out with Claire and I'd know you were here alone. Did I ask you to leave her? No. Did I call repeatedly? No. but you felt guilty. Yes, that was real, Evan. But it was not a command. You liked that I felt guilty. The accusation struck close enough to make denial useless. Sometimes, I said. Maybe. He finally sat. I continued before I lost courage. There were nights I was lonely and wanted you to choose me without my having to ask. I made extra food. I mentioned it. That wasn't fair. His anger faltered. But, I said, you took my loneliness and turned it into a story you could use whenever you wanted something from me, or wanted Claire to blame me instead of you. I didn't use you. You told her I needed wedding jobs. You told her I couldn't tolerate changing holidays. You told her marrying you would leave me with nothing. His eyes shifted. She told you that? Yes. She wasn't supposed to repeat every private conversation. Your privacy does not include inventing my motives. He stood again and began gathering wrappers. I can't do this. You came to do this. I came because I thought you might care that I'm losing Claire. I do care. You keep saying that while doing nothing. I am doing the hardest thing I know how to do. What, criticizing me? Letting you have a problem I could help hide? He shoved the wrappers into the paper sack. The half cookie remained between us. I don't need you to hide anything. Then tell her the truth. I have. Not why you did it. I told you why. You wanted to be needed without looking needy. You wanted to keep me available without admitting you depended on me. You wanted Claire to believe you were setting boundaries when you were sending me errands. That is not who I am. It is something you did. He stared at me with tears standing in his eyes. Evan had always cried when angry and hated himself for it. You're choosing her, he said. No, I'm choosing not to lie for you. Same thing. It shouldn't be. He walked to the door. Evan. He stopped, but did not turn. I love you, I said. His shoulders rose with one breath. That doesn't feel like enough right now. Then he left. On the kitchen table, the cookie sat untouched in its little plastic box. I ate my half. I wrapped his and put it in the refrigerator, which was not progress at all. The next morning, I found the cookie while reaching for milk. I touched the plastic box, then closed the refrigerator. By afternoon, the chocolate chips had developed a pale film. The day after that, one corner had gone hard enough to qualify as building material. I left it there anyway. On Friday, Evan texted. I talked to Claire. I waited for more. Nothing came. Good, I replied. That was the entirety of our relationship for the next 4 days. Gail said it was ridiculous to let a baked good occupy valuable refrigerator space. It's his half, I told her. He left it. He may come back. For a stale cookie? It was $6. Then it's an investment. She opened the box and tapped the cookie against the counter. It made a sound like a poker chip. If he comes back for this, he'll need dental work. I took it from her and threw it away. Look at you, Gail said, cruel and wasteful. I saved it for a week. Exactly. You've completed the traditional mourning period. She had come over to help me move the large dining table away from the wall so I could clean beneath it. The task took 5 minutes. We spent another hour drinking coffee. I told her about my conversation with Evan, including the part about guilt and Sundays. Gail listened while pulling apart a blueberry muffin and eating only the top. Was I doing that? I asked. Doing what? Making him feel responsible for me. Sometimes. I stared at her. You didn't ask for honesty, so you could be offended by it. I can do both. You were lonely. You wanted him there. There's no crime in that. I made it hard for him to say no. Sometimes, she repeated, you also fed him for 7 years, listened to him complain about office politics, and helped him move twice. Let's not burn you at the stake over a disappointed tone. He knew I was waiting. Yes. And I knew he knew. Yes. I leaned back. You're not being very comforting. I brought muffins. You ate the good part. You were busy reflecting. She pushed the bottom half toward me. The doorbell rang. Gail looked toward the hall. Are we expecting the prodigal casserole dish? No. Claire stood on the porch, holding the box of framed photographs. For one terrible second, I thought she had come to tell me the wedding was over. The box looked too final in her arms. Tom's red cap was visible through the glass of the top frame. "I should have called," she said. Yes, I was nearby. I waited. She shifted the box. "That's what Evan says, isn't it? Often. I can come back." Gail appeared behind me, carrying her purse and 2 muffins wrapped in a napkin. "You must be Claire," she said. "Yes, I'm Gail." "I know." Gail glanced at me. "I'm famous." "Not in a good way," I said. She extended a hand to Claire. "I was prepared not to like you." Gail. "What?" I said was. Claire shook her hand. "That's fair." Gail raised her eyebrows, apparently impressed. "I'm leaving," she said to me. "Call if you need me." "For what?" "Furniture. Witnessing. Baked goods." She walked past Claire and paused on the porch. "For the record," she said, "the cinnamon pickles weren't Marlene's fault." Then she left. Claire watched her go. "I like her. That will disappoint her." I took the box and Claire followed me inside. I set the frames on the dining table. The 4 faces looked up through layers of glass and tissue paper. "I didn't know where else they should be," she said. "Keeping them at the apartment felt strange. Because the wedding is postponed? Because I moved out?" My hand stopped on Tom's frame. "Completely? For now, I'm sorry. Are you?" "Yes." She looked at my face, searching for satisfaction. I understood why. If I had disliked her, if I had secretly wanted Evan returned to me, this would have been the moment I won. There was nothing victorious about my son's fiancée standing in my dining room with tired eyes and an empty ring box in her purse. The ring itself was still on her finger. "I don't want him destroyed," I said. "I want him honest. He thinks those are the same thing right now. Sometimes honesty feels destructive when you've built a comfortable arrangement around avoiding it." "Is that from Gail?" "No." Gail would have mentioned a shovel. Claire touched the edge of the box. "I came to apologize. You already sent flowers. I came to do it without flowers." I pulled out a chair. She sat. I took the chair across from her, the same one I had used when she came after postponing the wedding. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Claire turned her engagement ring around her finger. "At the tasting," she said, "I didn't just make a bad choice because Evan gave me bad information. I stayed quiet. I knew asking you to leave would embarrass you. Maybe not as much as it did, but I knew." Her voice shook. She pressed her lips together, then continued. "I had been angry for months. Every time something came up, Evan said you wanted it. The roles, the photographs, his relatives, Sundays. I started feeling like I was planning a wedding around your feelings. You could have asked me. I should have. You could have told me to step back. I should have done that too. But you didn't." "No." She looked directly at me. "I wanted one moment where Evan chose me in front of you." The sentence hurt, though I recognized it. "And he did," I said. "Yes." "How did that feel?" "Good for about 5 seconds. I looked toward Tom's photograph. Claire said, "Then I saw your face. I knew I'd done something ugly, and instead of stopping, I acted like your reaction was the problem. When you asked if you were part of the family, I wanted Evan to answer because I was afraid of what I'd say." He answered, "I know." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry I asked you to leave," she said. "I'm sorry I called it a family discussion when I meant a discussion with the people I had decided were on my side. I'm sorry I accepted help from you while resenting you for giving it. And I'm sorry I sent flowers with a sentence that made the whole thing sound like bad weather. I felt the apology enter all the places the first one had avoided. "Thank you," I said. She waited, perhaps expecting more. "I'm not ready to say it's all right. I'm not asking you to." "Good." She nodded. I lifted Tom's photograph from the box and wiped a smudge from the glass. "I owe you an apology, too," I said. Claire looked surprised. "I did involve myself where I wasn't asked. Maybe not in all the ways Evan claimed, but enough." You asked questions. I asked questions that were opinions wearing hats. Her mouth twitched. When you chose those low centerpieces, I continued, I asked whether people would be able to see them. They were 6 inches tall, I know. You also asked whether the photographer had experience with indoor lighting. He was 24. He owned lights. I'm apologizing. Sorry. I smiled despite myself. I treated some of your decisions like problems waiting for my experience, I said. That was unfair, and I sometimes made Evan's absence from Sunday dinner sound like a personal injury. He said you'd put food away loudly. How does one put food away loudly? He did an impression. I'd like to see it. It involved a cabinet. I closed my eyes. All right, possibly. Claire laughed, then covered her mouth. The laugh became a sob without warning. I waited until she had caught her breath. I don't know if we can fix this, she said. You and me? Me and Evan. I know. He came to my parents' house Tuesday. That must be when he texted me. He told me he'd talk to you. At first he spent 20 minutes explaining what you had done wrong. That sounds efficient. Then Richard asked him to leave. Oh, he didn't yell. He said Evan could come back when he was ready to talk about himself. I liked Richard more every week. Did he come back? I asked. The next night. What did he say? That he was afraid. The words sounded fragile in Claire's voice. Of what? Of disappointing everyone. Of me deciding he wasn't ready to be married. Of you having no reason to need him anymore. Of turning into his father, which he seems to think is both impossible and already happening. That sounds complicated. He also admitted he likes Sunday dinner. I looked down at the frame in my hands. He said he told me you needed it because admitting he wanted it made him feel childish. He could have said he enjoyed seeing his mother. I told him that. How did he take it? Poorly. That sounded like progress. Claire removed her ring, held it in her palm for a moment, then slid it back on. I'm not moving home yet, she said. I'm not setting another wedding date. We're going to talk once a week, somewhere public. Coffee? Last time it was a laundromat. I looked at her. My parents' washing machine broke and I needed clean clothes. That's public. It's very hard to manipulate someone while a dryer keeps buzzing. I laughed. She smiled, and the room felt different. Not repaired. Cleared, perhaps, of some of the furniture we had been tripping over. What happens to these? I asked, touching the frames. Keep Tom's. I'll take the others back when I know where back is. I carried Tom's photograph to the sideboard. He grinned at the room beneath his faded cap, eternally proud of that inadequate fish. Claire lifted the box. I can carry it, I said. I know. She carried it anyway. At the door, she paused. I don't expect us to become close because I apologized. Good. I'd like to try to know you without Evan explaining you. I'd like that too. She shifted the box against her hip. Would you have coffee with me sometime? Yes, I'll call first. That would distinguish you from the family. After she left, I stood at the window until she drove away. My phone buzzed. Evan had sent another message. Can I come Sunday? I'll bring dinner. I'll call before I leave. I read it twice. Then I wrote, 5 o'clock is fine. A minute later, he replied, What should I bring? I looked toward the refrigerator where his half of the cookie had been. Enough for both of us, I wrote, and no apology flowers. At 4:52 on Sunday, my phone rang. I'm outside, Evan said. I can see your car. You said I should call before I came. I meant before you left your apartment. You didn't specify. Come in before the food gets cold. He appeared carrying 2 large paper sacks and a cardboard drink tray. How many people are you feeding? I asked. I didn't know what you wanted. So you bought the menu. There were combination options. He had brought barbecue from a place near the river. Pulled pork, brisket, chicken, 3 kinds of sauce, baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, and a banana pudding large enough to baptize someone in. No flowers, he said. I see that. I followed instructions. You also brought 6 pounds of meat. I panicked. It was honest enough to be funny. We spread the containers across the kitchen table. He reached automatically for plates, then stopped. "Can I? You know where they are." He opened the cabinet and took out 2 plates instead of setting the whole table. I watched him put napkins beside them. He had brought real napkins from his apartment, folded into rectangles. "What are those?" I asked. "Napkins. They're cloth. I own cloth." "I've never seen proof." "Claire bought them." Of course she had. We filled our plates and sat. For a while we talked about the food. The brisket was too dry. The beans were sweet enough to qualify as dessert. One sauce had a handwritten warning on the lid, which Evan ignored and then spent 5 minutes pretending his eyes were not watering. "You don't have to finish it," I said. "I'm fine, you're sweating. It's warm in here. It's 68 degrees. He drank half his water. The ordinary conversation helped, but I could feel the real one waiting. So could he. It sat between the macaroni and cornbread, taking up more room than either. Finally, Evan wiped his mouth and said, "Claire told me she came here. I know. She told me she apologized." "She did. Did you?" "Yes." That surprised him. For what? For the ways I was too involved. He looked down at his plate. "So you admit I wasn't making everything up. I never said you were. You made it sound like I invented a whole person. You exaggerated a real part of me because it made your choices easier." He picked at the edge of his cornbread. "I'm trying not to defend myself," he said. "You can disagree with me. That isn't the same as defending. Claire says I explain things until everybody gets too tired to stay mad. That sounds accurate. I want to explain why that's not accurate." I laughed. He did too, reluctantly. Then he became serious. "I'm sorry I let her ask you to leave." The wording was careful. I waited. He noticed. "No," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't stop her." I said nothing. I knew she wanted the discussion with her parents. I didn't know she was going to say it like that, but once she did, I was relieved. That was the first thing he had said that I had not already known. Relieved? Because she had been angry with me all week. She thought I wasn't setting boundaries with you, so she set one. "Yes, and you let me pay for it." His eyes met mine. "Yes." The word came quietly. I put my fork down. At the table, when you looked at me, he said, "I knew it was wrong. But if I defended you, Claire would think I was choosing you. If I agreed with her, you'd be hurt. So you asked me to make it easy. I knew you would." He rubbed his palm against one of Claire's cloth napkins. "That's the part I'm ashamed of," he said. "Not that I was confused, that I knew which one of you would absorb it." The kitchen clock ticked above the refrigerator. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "Are you going to forgive me?" The question sounded younger than he was. "I'm going to try." "What does that mean?" "It means I believe your apology. It does not mean I'm ready to go back to how things were. I don't want how things were." He said it quickly. The answer hurt before I understood it. Evan saw my face. "I don't mean I don't want dinners," he said. "I mean, I don't want to keep acting like there's something I do for you." I looked down at my plate. "I like coming here," he continued. "I like your food. I like sitting around afterward and complaining about television shows neither of us has watched. I told Claire it was your tradition because saying I wanted it made me feel like I hadn't grown up. You can be grown and still have a mother. I know that now. Knowing something during barbecue is easier than knowing it during conflict. I know that too." We ate a little more. Then he said, "Claire and I are talking every Wednesday." She told me. His expression flickered. "She told you everything." "No." "What did she say?" "That you were talking." "Did she say if she's moving back?" "No." "Did she say whether she still wants to get married?" "I didn't ask." "Why not?" "Because then I'd have information you should get from her." He nodded, though he looked disappointed. "I almost asked you to tell her I apologized," he said. "Why didn't you?" "Because I heard your voice in my head. I'm sorry. You weren't saying anything kind." "That sounds more likely." He smiled. After dinner, he packed half the leftovers for himself without waiting for me to do it. He left enough brisket and chicken to feed me for several lunches, but not enough to make the refrigerator feel occupied by his return. At the door, he hugged me. He had hugged me thousands of times casually on arrival or departure. This one felt deliberate. "I love you," he said. "I love you too. I'll call next week. Call because you want to." He leaned back. What other reason would there be? Habit. Guilt. A bat. The bat was huge. It was the size of a sandwich. It flew. So do moths. Moths don't have faces. Good night, Evan. He called Wednesday after he met Claire. He did not tell me what they discussed. He asked how my hydrangeas were doing and whether Gail still had the green bowl. She put potato salad in it, I said. So, it's the same bowl. It's not. You said it looked identical. Do not encourage her. The following Sunday, he called at noon to ask whether I wanted company for dinner. "I'm meeting Gail," I said. "Oh. We're trying a new Italian place. That's fine." The disappointment in his voice pulled at me. "You can come Tuesday," I said. "I have something Tuesday. Then next week." He was quiet. "All right," he said. "Have fun." It took me an hour to stop feeling guilty. It took another hour to recognize that guilt did not require a phone call. The Italian place served pasta in bowls so wide the server had to rearrange the table. Gail ordered something with clams and spent the meal suspiciously examining each shell. "You realize the clam is supposed to be in there," I said. "I'm checking." "For what?" "Commitment. You should have ordered chicken. Chicken has secrets too." My phone stayed in my purse. Claire called 2 days later and asked if I wanted coffee. We met at a bakery near her office. She arrived carrying a laptop bag and looking more like herself, though she still wore her ring on the same nervous rotation around her finger. We talked about neutral things first: Gail's bowl, Joanne's broken washing machine, Richard's discovery that laundromat dryers operated in units of 6 minutes, and his outrage at the economy. Then Claire said, "I owe you another conversation. What did you do?" "Nothing." "That's a poor opening. I mean, Thanksgiving." I stirred my coffee. "I don't expect an answer now," she said. "But if Evan and I get married, I want us to talk directly about holidays." "I agree. I'd like some with my parents." "I assumed you would. I'd also like some where we host." "You should." She narrowed her eyes. "This is going too easily. Would you like me to object?" "No, I'm trying to understand why we never had this conversation." "Because Evan had it for us, and because we let him." "Yes." She sat back. "What would you want? To host sometimes. Not every year. Would alternating work? Possibly. Or we could decide each year like adults with calendars. My mother will hate that. Your mother bought furniture in January." Claire laughed. We spent 20 minutes discussing holidays without drawing battle lines. Christmas morning mattered to Joanne. Thanksgiving dinner mattered to me. Claire cared less about the actual dates than she did about not spending every holiday driving across Ohio with a pie on her lap. None of it was impossible. The impossible part had been admitting that everyone wanted something. When we left, Claire hugged me. It was brief and slightly awkward. Evan called that evening. "You had coffee with Claire?" "Yes. She told me you discussed holidays." "We did. Without me. You were not necessary for a conversation between her and me. It affects me. So does every conversation you have with her about me. That's different." I let the silence work. He heard himself. "Okay," he said. "That sounded bad. It sounded familiar. I'm just worried the two of you are making decisions." "We made no decisions. But you talked about Thanksgiving." "Yes." He exhaled. "I feel like I'm being excluded from my own life." The irony was so complete I did not need to point at it. "How does that feel?" I asked. "Terrible." "Yes." He was quiet. Then he said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For calling like you'd done something wrong before I asked what happened." "Thank you. I'm trying." "I know. I'm not good at it. No one is at first." He laughed once. "You sound like Dad. Your father would have changed the subject by now." "Probably." Another silence. Warmer this time. Claire says she might move home next month, he said. That's good news. She says it isn't a decision about the wedding. Then don't make it one. I know. Do you? No, he admitted, but I'm trying to know. Before we hung up, he asked if he could come for dinner Sunday. Yes, I said, but I'm cooking 1 chicken. I'll bring potatoes. 2. I eat more than 1 potato. Then bring 3. He laughed. On Sunday, he arrived with a 5-pound bag. When I looked at it, he lifted both hands. I'm learning boundaries, he said, not mathematics. I put the bag on the floor beside the pantry. You're taking 4 pounds home. I don't know how to cook potatoes. You boil water. I know how to boil water. Then you're halfway there. Evan washed 3 potatoes while I seasoned the chicken. He stood at the sink with his sleeves pushed up, turning each one beneath the faucet as if searching for a label. Do I peel them? Do you want them peeled? I asked you. And I'm asking you. He looked at me over his shoulder. Is this a lesson? It's a potato. He left the skins on. We cut them into wedges, tossed them with oil, and put them around the chicken. When he reached for the salt, I moved his hand toward the pepper. You said this wasn't a lesson. It isn't. It's an intervention. While dinner roasted, he told me Claire was moving back to their apartment the following Friday. Not because everything's fixed, he said. I know. And she's keeping some things at her parents' house. That sounds sensible. She says she wants to know she can leave without it turning into a threat. I set 2 wine glasses on the counter. How do you feel about that? Like I'm being punished. Anything else? He leaned against the refrigerator, like she's right. The answer had cost him something. I poured wine into both glasses and handed him one. That must be uncomfortable, I said. It's terrible. Most useful things are. Potatoes are useful. They're not terrible. We haven't tasted yours yet. They were excellent, which annoyed me. Evan acted as if he had discovered agriculture. The Sunday after Claire moved home, he canceled dinner. He called Saturday morning instead of waiting until I had bought food. We're going to her parents' house, he said. Richard wants to grill. All right. Are you sure? Yes, because I can come by Monday. I'm meeting Gail Monday. What are you doing? We're taking a stained glass class. There was a silence. Why? Apparently, we have too much skin on our hands. You don't have to make plans just because I'm not coming. I set down my coffee. I didn't. I only meant, I know what you meant. He exhaled. That sounded worse after I said it. It usually does. Have fun. You too. The stained glass class was held in the back room of a craft store that smelled like dust and hot metal. Gail chose a pattern of a bluebird and immediately cut its wing in half. It's abstract, she said. It's injured. Art requires suffering. My sunflower has 8 different sized petals. That's because nature is cruel. We spent 3 hours grinding sharp edges from pieces of colored glass. I did not think about what Evan was eating until we were nearly finished. When I got home, he'd sent a photograph of Richard standing beside a blackened tray of chicken. Dad has competition, the message said. I laughed, then remembered how fiercely he had reacted when I mentioned Tom's flaws. This time, the joke was his. I sent back, your father would have buried the evidence. By the end of the month, Evan and Claire had developed a way of speaking to each other that sounded clumsy and over-careful. They came to Sunday dinner together once, and I heard it in the kitchen. Would you like me to open the wine? Evan asked. Claire looked at the corkscrew already in his hand. Yes. I don't want to assume. It's wine, Evan. I'm practicing. Practice silently. He opened it. They were not transformed. Claire still corrected him when he told stories too slowly. Evan still offered explanations when an apology would have been shorter. Once, while I cleared plates, they argued about whether he had promised to call the plumber or merely said the plumber should be called. I said I would handle it, he insisted. Claire looked at me. Do you see? I'm carrying dishes, I said. Evan followed me into the kitchen. Tell her handle it doesn't necessarily mean I personally call. I have no opinion. You always have an opinion. I'm trying something new. Claire laughed from the dining room. Later, When she was in the bathroom, Evan whispered, "I did say I'd call. I know, I'm calling tomorrow. Tell her, not me." He did. They did not announce another wedding date that summer. The canceled date passed on a rainy Saturday. I woke knowing exactly what day it was and pretended not to until noon. At 2, Claire called. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I'm not the one whose wedding was supposed to be today." "I know, but you had plans too." I looked toward the desk drawer where the invitation remained. "I'm sad," I said. "Me too. Do you regret postponing?" "No." The answer was immediate. "Then sadness isn't a reason to undo it." She was quiet. "That sounded like something I'd say," she said. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." No, the three of us did not see each other that day. Evan and Claire went hiking somewhere with poor phone reception. Gail and I watched an old movie at my house and ate popcorn from her green bowl. In August, Evan asked if Claire and I could come to their apartment for dinner. Joanne and Richard were invited too. "Is this an announcement?" I asked. "It's dinner. Should I bring anything?" "No. Are you cooking?" "Yes." "What should I eat before I come?" He hung up on me. Their apartment looked different from the last time I'd been there. Claire's things had returned, but not all of them. A row of framed prints leaned against the hallway wall instead of being re-hung. 2 cardboard boxes remained beside the bookcase. The place looked occupied without pretending permanence had been restored. Evan made spaghetti. The sauce was slightly sweet and the noodles had been cooked past resistance. I ate everything. Richard brought wine. Joanne brought bread despite being told not to. It was rosemary focaccia. I panicked, she said. Evan looked at me, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek. After dinner, Claire folded her napkin into a square. Every person at the table noticed. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said. "I use napkins." Richard coughed into his fist. Claire reached for Evan's hand. "We've decided we still want to get married," she said. Joanne closed her eyes. Richard nodded once, as if receiving a favorable medical result. I looked at Evan. He looked frightened and happy, mostly frightened. "We're not doing the old wedding," he said. "Not because it was bad. It just feels like it belonged to people we were trying to be." "We want something smaller," Claire continued. "About 60 guests. At the conservatory in October." "October?" Joanne said. "That's 10 weeks. We've already spoken to them. What about flowers?" "Mom," I asked one question. "And Bellwether can still do the food," Evan said. "A shorter menu, no plated dinner. We don't want the whole thing to turn into another production." Richard raised his glass. "I support any wedding where no one asks me to choose a charger plate." "You chose silver," Joanne reminded him. "I was coerced." They began discussing practical details. I listened without offering anything. Evan looked at me. "You're quiet. I'm happy for you. That's all? What else would you like?" "I don't know. An opinion." Claire smiled faintly. "Careful." He nodded. "Right. Mom, we'd like your opinion if you want to give it." "About what?" "The ceremony. The menu. Anything." "Why?" The table went still. Not because the question was hostile, because everyone understood it deserved an answer. Claire spoke first. "Because you're part of the family. And," Evan added, "because we enjoy some of your opinions." "Some?" "The low centerpieces were fine." "I know." Claire squeezed his hand. "We're having one menu meeting next Thursday," she said. "My parents will be there. We want you there too. Not to manage it, not to bring a folder, just to taste things." I looked at Joanne. She raised both hands. "I have purchased no furniture." "All right," I said. "I'll come." At Bellwether the following Thursday, Natalie greeted us without showing surprise. If she remembered me leaving alone after the lemon tart, her face revealed nothing. This time, we sat at a round table in the main dining room. No upholstered walls, no fake fireplace, no photographer taking pictures of us pretending not to notice him. The menu had 6 items. Claire and Evan had chosen them together. When the rolls arrived, they were larger than before. The onion had been sautéed properly, and no rosemary had been sprinkled on top. Natalie placed the basket between us. "We can serve these or the focaccia," she said. Evan took a roll and broke it open. I want these, he said. Claire tasted one. They're heavy. They are. People will eat too many before dinner. They will. Joanne looked at me. I kept chewing. Claire smiled. Okay, the rolls. Evan shook his head. Only if you want them too. I do. I just reserve the right to blame your family when my dress gets tight. My family accepts. He said my family without looking at me for permission. Later, Natalie reviewed the special meals. Richard's was again marked gluten-free. I saw the mistake and said nothing. Evan leaned over the page. My father-in-law needs low sodium, not gluten-free, he said. Natalie corrected it. Richard looked at me across the table. He had noticed too. After dessert, Claire folded her napkin. We do need to discuss holidays, she said. No one moved. She looked at me. Would you like to stay? It was almost too deliberate, too perfect. For an instant, I resented the question because it reminded everyone she could still ask it. Then I saw the fear beneath her smile. She was not displaying kindness. She was risking refusal. Yes, I said, I would. We discussed Thanksgiving for 23 minutes. Joanne wanted Christmas morning. I wanted one holiday at my house. Richard wanted to avoid driving after dark. Evan wanted everybody to stop pretending New Year's Day did not count. No one won. No one was sent home. In the parking lot, Evan walked me to my car. I'm sorry, he said. For what? That being included now makes the first time hurt again. I looked at him. He had not asked me to reassure him. It does, I said. He nodded. Then he opened my car door, waited until I was seated, and handed me a paper bag. Inside were 4 leftover rolls. I told Natalie you wanted them, he said. I stared at him. His eyes widened. No. Sorry. I asked if I could take them, and I wanted to give them to you. That's different. I know. Do you? I'm trying. I put the bag on the passenger seat. Thank you, I said. He shut the door gently. As I pulled away, I saw him standing beneath the sycamore, pale green dust on the shoulders of his blue shirt. This time, he had ironed it himself. The rolls lasted 2 days. I ate one that night with butter, froze 2, and gave the 4th to Gail, who examined it as if it might contain evidence. This is the famous roll? It's bread. It broke up a wedding. No, it didn't. Then why did you tell me about it 6 times? I did not. You told me when they rejected it, when they chose it, when Evan gave it to you, and twice about the onion. That's 4. You just told me again. She tore it in half. It's good. His grandmother made them better. Of course she did. She's dead. Death improves every recipe. By the time the new invitation arrived, the first one was still in my desk drawer. The new card was smaller, printed on soft white paper without raised lettering. Claire Bennett and Evan Porter invited me to join them at the conservatory on an October Saturday at 4. Beneath the ceremony details, in Claire's neat handwriting, she had added, "We'd be happy to have you there whenever you arrive." No job, no instruction, no hidden green box. I placed the new invitation on the mantel. The old one remained in the drawer. The smaller wedding did not eliminate conflict, it merely reduced the number of chairs around it. Diane was upset that her cousin Linda had not been invited. Linda had met Evan twice and called him Ethan both times, but Diane believed excluding her would create a permanent fracture. Who should I call? Diane asked me. Evan. I don't want to bother him. Then accept the guest list. You used to handle this side of the family. I know. She waited for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she called him. Evan later told me they had spoken for 47 minutes. Did she mention Linda's hip? He asked. She always mentions Linda's hip. What does that have to do with the wedding? Nothing. Diane billed slowly. I told her no. How did it feel? Like I'd kicked over a church pew. Did you change your answer? No. Then you survived. He came to dinner that Sunday carrying a pie. I earned dessert, he said. Claire had her own trouble with Joanne, who responded to the smaller ceremony by developing larger opinions. She wanted candles down the entire conservatory aisle. Claire wanted none because the venue was full of plants and, as she put it, already looked decorated by God. Joanne called me. "Don't you think a few candles would make it feel more intentional? I think you should ask Claire." I did. She said no. "Then you have your answer." "But you've seen the space." "I have." And Claire said no. Joanne sighed. "You're less helpful than you used to be." "I'm trying." In September, Claire asked me to go dress shopping with her. Not for her dress. That had survived the postponement in a garment bag at Joanne's house. She wanted to help me find mine. "I have clothes," I said. "You have the navy dress. What's wrong with the navy dress? You wore it to your cousin's funeral. It's versatile. It looks like you're attending a tasteful sentencing." We went with Gail, who believed all formal wear should have pockets, and announced this standard to every sales associate. I chose a deep green dress with soft sleeves and a neckline that did not require special engineering. Claire found it first, then waited outside the fitting room instead of carrying in 6 alternatives. When I stepped out, she smiled. "That's the one." Gail circled me. "No pockets," she said. "I'll carry a purse." "At a wedding? Dangerous?" "What do you need me to hold?" "Tissues, mints, emergency chocolate." "You're not invited." That has never prevented me from preparing. Claire caught my eye in the mirror. "I'd like Gail to come," she said. Gail stopped circling. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know." We had 2 people decline. I like her. "You heard what she said about running Evan over." She said a little. Gail pressed one hand to her chest. "I've been understood." The invitation did not turn Gail into a Claire supporter. It made her suspicious. "She's either growing or planning something," she said in the car. "People can change." "I know. I don't care for surprises. You bought a haunted bowl at a flea market. That bowl had a past. Different." Evan began calling before Sunday, usually on Thursday, to ask whether I had plans. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't want to cook. On those Sundays, we ordered food or he cooked. His potato repertoire expanded to include mashing, though the first batch had the texture of repair compound. Claire came with him more often. She and I did not become mother and daughter. We became 2 women who could disagree without asking Evan to explain the other. Once she criticized the way I stacked glasses in the dishwasher. "They don't get clean when they touch," she said. "They're barely touching. They're leaning on each other. They've had a long day." She moved one. I moved it back. Evan entered the kitchen, saw us, and retreated without a word. "Did he just leave?" Claire asked. "He's learning." We both laughed. The night before the wedding, the 5 of us had dinner at Bellwether. Not a rehearsal dinner, Claire insisted. Just dinner after walking through the ceremony once. The table was in the main room. Natalie brought the rolls without being reminded. Joanne touched every centerpiece but did not move any of them. Richard lifted his glass. "I was told there would be no speeches," he said. "There won't," Claire replied. "This is a toast. That is a short speech. I'll be brief. To getting things wrong early enough to get them right." We raised our glasses. Evan looked at me. For half a second, I saw him waiting for me to reassure him that everything had been put right. Then he nodded to himself and drank. The wedding morning was cold and bright. Sunlight flashed across the conservatory's glass roof, turning the wet leaves outside silver. The ceremony space smelled of soil, eucalyptus, and the faint sweetness of the white flowers Claire had chosen. I arrived at 2:30 because that was when I wanted to arrive. A woman with a headset met me near the entrance. "Mrs. Ellis? You're the groom's mother?" "Yes, wonderful. You can relax in the East Room. We'll come find you for photographs." That was all. No list, no emergency bag, no request to locate relatives who had misplaced the address printed on their invitations. I walked through the reception room. 60 place settings surrounded small tables beneath hanging vines. The linens were cream. The centerpieces were low enough for conversation. Tom's photograph stood on a shelf with the other 3 memorial pictures. No special display, no paragraph explaining him, just his uneven grin beneath the faded red cap. I touched the frame. "You must be Marlene." A man I vaguely recognized approached carrying a camera. "I'm Daniel, the photographer." "You owned lights at 24? He blinked. "Sorry," I said. "Private joke." He pointed toward a wall covered in ivy. "We're doing family photographs there in about 20 minutes. All right? You don't need anything?" "No." He looked pleasantly surprised, which suggested his profession had taught him to fear mothers. In the East Room, Gail sat on a velvet bench eating mints from a tin. "Emergency supplies," she said. "You came early. I expected disorder. You sound disappointed. I found a woman crying in the restroom, but she was attending another event." Joanne entered wearing a blue-gray dress and carrying 3 garment bags she did not need. "Has anyone seen Claire's wrap?" she asked. "She had it upstairs," Gail said. "How do you know?" "I investigate." Joanne looked at me. "Is she always like this?" "Yes. I'm warming to her. We took photographs." Joanne adjusted Claire's veil twice. Claire removed it once and finally decided she wanted it after all. Richard lost his reading glasses while they were on top of his head. Diane asked where Linda was sitting and had to be reminded that Linda was not coming. Evan was nowhere. I noticed, but did not ask. At 3:20, the woman with the headset came into the East Room. "Mrs. Ellis, Evan would like to see you." Every muscle in my body tightened with old readiness. What happened? Nothing. He's in the West sitting room. I followed her down a hall lined with potted palms. The West room was small with 2 leather chairs and a mirror above a narrow table. Evan stood at the window in a charcoal suit. His blue shirt was gone, replaced by a white one. The cuffs were smooth. His tie was slightly crooked. He turned when I entered. "You look beautiful," he said. "So do you." He made a face. "Handsome. You're very demanding for a groom." I waited for him to tell me what needed fixing. He put both hands in his pockets. "I'm scared." The simplicity of it stopped me. Of the ceremony? Of getting it wrong again. He looked toward the mirror. Claire asked if I was nervous, and I told her I was fine. Then I went back and told her I lied. What did she say? That she knew. That sounds like Claire. She said being scared isn't a reason to hide. She's right. I know. He sat in one of the chairs. I took the other. "I keep thinking about Dad," he said. "So do I. I wish he were here." "Me too." What would he tell me? I considered it. He'd tell you the suit looks good. That's it? He might make a joke about marriage being a life sentence. He made that joke at every wedding. He thought it was excellent. Evan smiled, then looked down. "I don't want to become the worst part of him. You won't avoid that by pretending the worst part wasn't there." "I know. And you are not a copy of your father." "I know that too." He looked at me. "I didn't ask you here to calm me down. I was beginning to wonder. I wanted to tell you the truth before I went out there." "Thank you." And I wanted to say something else. He rubbed his palms against his trousers. "At the first tasting, I made you leave alone because I was afraid of losing Claire. I almost lost her anyway. Then I blamed you because I knew you'd still love me." I swallowed. "I'm sorry I treated your love like the safest place to put what I didn't want." For a moment, neither of us moved. "That was a very expensive sentence," I said. "What?" Emotionally. He laughed, and his eyes filled at the same time. "I'm not asking you to fix anything," he said. "I know. Could you straighten my tie?" I stood. "Yes." He rose and stepped close. I loosened the knot, centered it, and drew it carefully against his collar. His face above me was Tom's and not Tom's. "There," I said. He looked in the mirror. "Better?" "Much." He held out his hand. "Will you walk with me to the ceremony room?" I thought the groomsmen were doing that." "They are. I want you to come as far as the door." I took his hand. We walked down the palm-lined hall together. At the entrance to the ceremony space, his friends waited, adjusting cuffs and whispering jokes. Evan squeezed my fingers. "I've got it from here," he said. This time, the words did not send me away. They gave me back my hand. I went to my seat beside Gail. Joanne sat across the aisle with Richard. Music began. The room rose. Claire appeared beneath an arch of green leaves, holding her father's arm. Before she started down the aisle, she looked past the flowers, past Evan, and found me. I nodded. Not permission, not surrender, recognition. She walked toward him. When they spoke their vows, neither promised perfection. Evan's voice shook. Claire's did not until the final line. At the reception, Natalie served the rolls. Richard's dinner was low sodium. Gail ate 2 pieces of cake and denied the second. No one made a public apology. No one announced what we had survived. The guests laughed, drank, and complained that the conservatory became cold after sunset. After dinner, music began. Evan crossed the room toward me and held out his hand. "Mom," he said, "would you like to dance?" I looked at his open palm. "Yes," I said, "I would." The song was one Tom used to sing badly in the car. Evan had not chosen it for that reason. At least I didn't think he had. It was an old song everybody knew, slow enough for people without rhythm and short enough to prevent them from becoming a spectacle. He placed one hand at my waist. I took his other. "You remember how?" he asked. "I taught you. You stood on Dad's feet. That was because your father danced like a refrigerator being moved." Evan laughed, then looked over my shoulder toward Tom's photograph. I wish he could see this. He'd complain about the price of parking. He would. And then he'd tell everyone the rolls were his mother's recipe. They were. He didn't know how to make them. Neither do I. That has never stopped a Porter man from taking credit. Evan pulled me a little closer. Around us, other guests began joining the dance floor. Richard and Claire moved past, her cheek against her father's shoulder. Joanne was dancing with an uncle who looked alarmed by her energy. Gail stood near the cake table, nodding at me with tears in her eyes while pretending to study the frosting. "I was angry with you for loving me wrong," Evan said. The sentence was so quiet I almost missed it. What does that mean? When you made too much food or sounded hurt if I didn't come, I acted like you were doing something to me. But I never told you I wanted it to change. No. I liked knowing the light would be on. My eyes burned. "That doesn't mean I was always fair," I said. "I know. I did expect you sometimes." "I know. And sometimes I made disappointment your problem. I know that, too. You're agreeing a lot. I'm married now. I'm practicing." I pinched his hand. He smiled. "I don't want you waiting every Sunday," he said. "I won't. I do want to come sometimes. Call first, before I leave or from the driveway. Use your judgment. That seems risky." The song ended. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Evan kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you for coming." It was an ordinary thing to say to a wedding guest. That was why it mattered. Claire met me at the edge of the dance floor. Her veil was gone, and several curls had escaped around her face. "May I borrow my husband?" she asked. "You don't have to ask me." "I know." Evan held out his hand to her. She took it, then touched my arm. "Stay," she said. "Dance with us." I don't think the 3-person dance is traditional. Neither was the tasting. Evan winced. Claire's eyes widened. That sounded better in my head. "Most things do," I said. "We danced anyway, not for long." Gail appeared and insisted she had been promised access to the groom. Joanne dragged Richard into the middle of the floor. A cousin began dancing with one of the catering staff before realizing the man was trying to collect an empty glass. No one watched the 3 of us closely enough to turn it into a symbol. I was grateful. Later, Claire and Evan cut the cake. He put a small amount of frosting on the tip of her nose. She wiped it across his forehead. Joanne looked horrified by the photographs. Richard laughed until he had to sit down. When the reception began thinning, I carried Tom's frame from the shelf. Claire saw me and crossed the room. "I was going to pack that for you," she said. "I can carry it." "I know." We both smiled. She looked at Tom's face through the glass. "I wish I'd met him. He would have liked you. How do you know? He liked people who told him when he was being foolish. He married the right woman." "He did." Her smile softened. "Thank you for not pretending nothing happened," she said. "That's a strange thank you. I mean, during all of this. You could have accepted the flowers and hated me quietly. I considered it." "I know. I'm glad I didn't. So am I." She started to hug me, then hesitated. I opened one arm because the frame occupied the other. She stepped into it. "Welcome to the family," I said. When she leaned back, her eyes were wet. "I was already in it," she said. "Yes." It was the correct answer. I drove home with Tom's photograph belted into the passenger seat. The florist had given me a small arrangement from one of the tables, and it sat on the floor beneath him, pale flowers nodding each time I turned. My house was dark. I switched on the hall light, set Tom on the sideboard, and placed the flowers on the dining table. For a moment, the silence rushed toward me. Weddings are full of departure disguised as celebration. Everybody goes home with someone or goes home remembering whom they once had. I took off my shoes and carried the new invitation from the mantel to the desk. The old one was still in the drawer. I held them side by side. One promised a grander day that never happened. The other invited me to the day that did. I did not tear up the first or keep it as evidence. I placed both in a box with Tom's old red cap and closed the lid. The next morning, nobody called before 8. At 9:15, Evan sent a photograph of 2 room service coffee cups beside a rumpled white napkin. "We're married," he wrote. I replied, "I attended." 3 dots appeared. "Thank you for not calling to wake us." I wrote, "Growth on all sides." He sent back a picture of Claire holding one coffee cup and making a face at the camera. They left for a short trip to Asheville that afternoon. I did not ask for their itinerary. Claire sent one photograph of a mountain and another of Evan trying to eat a biscuit that had collapsed under too much gravy. I sent back, "He was raised better." When they returned, they did not come to Sunday dinner. They slept late, unpacked, and ordered pizza in their own apartment. I knew because Evan told me on Monday, not because he asked whether I had been lonely. I had gone to Gail's. We ate soup from mismatched bowls and watched her attempt to hang the bluebird she had repaired in stained glass class. One wing was visibly smaller than the other. "It has character," she said. "It has suffered. Art requires, I know." The following Sunday, Evan and Claire came over. He called on Thursday. Claire called Saturday to ask whether she could bring dessert. "You don't have to bring anything," I said. "I know. I'm asking if I can." "What is it?" "Apple cake." "Then yes." She arrived with the cake. Evan arrived with 3 potatoes. "I'm honoring the agreement," he said. "There is no potato agreement. There is now." They did not come every Sunday after that. Sometimes 2 weeks passed, once nearly 3. Evan canceled because he and Claire had made plans with friends. He called on Friday and said, "I know you bought chicken. I haven't. You always buy it by Friday. Not anymore." There was a pause. "Oh," he said. "Do you want me to sound hurt?" "No. Are you sure?" He laughed. "I'll call next week." The light still came on in my kitchen, whether he arrived or not. I kept cooking, though differently. 1 fish fillet, 2 lamb chops when Gail came, a pot of soup large enough for freezing rather than for a son who might appear hungry. Sometimes I made roast chicken because I wanted roast chicken, and if leftovers survived until Thursday, I blamed poor planning instead of abandonment. Claire and I met for coffee once a month, not because we scheduled a monthly mother and daughter ritual, because after the second time she called again, and after the third, I did. She still found me intrusive sometimes. I still found her sharp. When she replaced the living room curtains without asking Evan's opinion, I said, "Don't you think he should have a say?" She stared at me over her coffee. "What?" "Nothing," I said. That was an opinion wearing a hat. It was wearing a very small hat. She laughed and later asked him about the curtains. He did not care. At Thanksgiving, dinner was at my house. Christmas morning belonged to Joanne and Richard. New Year's Day took place at Evan and Claire's apartment, where Evan served potatoes 3 ways and behaved as if he had earned a culinary degree. No one called the arrangement a compromise. That would have suggested each person had surrendered something. We had simply asked, answered, and tolerated the fact that not every answer pleased everyone. On a cold Sunday in February, my doorbell rang at 4:58. I was reading in the living room. No chicken roasted in the oven. No table had been set. Through the glass, I saw Evan holding a covered casserole and Claire balancing a grocery bag against one hip. I opened the door. "We called," Evan said. "I remember. I'm stating it for the record." There is no record. There used to be a folder. Claire handed me the grocery bag. Don't encourage him. Inside were salad greens, bread, and a bottle of wine. The casserole contained baked pasta they had made together. "You brought dinner," I said. "That was the arrangement," Claire replied. "I thought you might bring ingredients and ask to use my oven." "We used our own oven," Evan said proudly. "Did you preheat it?" He looked offended. We ate at the dining table. Evan's old water ring remained beneath his glass, faint but visible when the light struck it. The pasta was good, not excellent. I ate 2 helpings. Afterward, Evan stood and began collecting plates. "I'll do those," I said automatically. I know. He carried them into the kitchen anyway. Claire stayed at the table with me. She ran one finger around the base of her wine glass. "We need to talk about next Christmas," she said. I felt my shoulders tighten before I could stop them. "What about it?" "My parents want to rent a cabin for the week. That sounds nice." "They want us to come." I waited. "I'd like to," she said. "All week?" "Yes." The old reaction arrived with familiar speed. A picture of my house on Christmas morning, Tom's red cap in the box upstairs, Evan absent, the quiet I had learned to survive but had not learned to enjoy. Claire watched my face. "I knew you'd be disappointed," she said. "I am. I didn't want Evan to tell you." "Good. And I don't want to decide without talking about what matters to you." From the kitchen came the sound of running water and plates touching. Evan did not return to translate either of us. "What I want," I said, "is not always the same as what you should do. I know. But it still belongs in the conversation." The words settled gently. Evan came back, drying his hands on a towel. "Did you ask her?" he said. "Yes. And she's disappointed." He looked at me. "I am," I said. His old guilt crossed his face. I watched him feel it without rushing to remove it. "We could come the weekend before," he said. "Have Christmas here early. That might work?" "Or you could come to the cabin," Claire said. I laughed. "With Joanne for a week? Maybe 4 days. 3. We'll discuss it." No one solved Christmas that night. We talked until the wine was gone and the room had grown dark around the edges. Claire disagreed with me twice. Evan admitted he wanted the cabin. I admitted I wanted them at my table. No one disguised a wish as somebody else's need. At last, Claire looked at the empty plates and said, "Should we help with the kitchen? You already cooked." That wasn't the question. "Yes," I said. "You can help." Evan carried the casserole dish. Claire took the glasses. I turned off the dining room light and followed them. At the doorway, Claire stepped aside so I could enter first, not because I had earned a place by feeding them, not because my son needed me to fix what he was afraid to face, because there was a conversation still happening, and I belonged in it.